So we're good? Okay. Good morning, councilors, SLT, and members of the viewing public. I see that we do indeed have quorum for today's meeting, so I call this meeting, regular council meeting of Wednesday, April 19th, into session. As usual, before we go any further, we have a land recognition statement, and today it is my turn to read this. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Thank you. Before I turn to the clerk to continue on to the agenda, I would just like to say that last night myself and Councillors Kerr and Olson attended the Fond Hill Lions Agricultural Night. They tell me it's been in existence for some 70 years. It was a great time. The Legion ladies put on a great meal, and the guest speaker was chairman of the board for Wells of Hope, which is an organization that goes down to Guatemala and drills wells in the mountains for the mountain regions people. And it was quite a story they had, and they are definitely making a difference in that country. Just wanted to thank Fond Hill Lions for giving everyone an opportunity to get together for an evening of that caliber. Thank you. And now I turn to the clerk on items of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for April 19th, 2023 regular meeting of Council be adopted as amended.
Okay. Council, any discussions on this? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Commencing with the vote then, Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
Councillor Nisnik?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion is carried, Your Worship. The next motion we have then is moved by Councillor Eckhart again and seconded by Councillor Olson that the agenda be adopted as amended. Sorry, I got those backwards. So I think we can proceed now to the next one. So next item is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Okay, thank you. After viewing the agenda, does any council member have a declaration of a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to item 5.11, Town of Pelham Recreation Master Plan. We have a presentation this morning from Mr. Steve Langlois, Principal Planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants.
Great. And Mr. Langlois, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you for welcoming us. I do represent a larger team that's been working on this Recreation, Culture and Parks Master Plan for a number of months, so we're pleased to bring it in front of you for your consideration today. It is draft. It is open for your input this morning. It's also going to be, we're asking today to put it out and release it to the public for additional feedback before we come back before council to finalize it. So that's a little bit of our next steps as well. I'm going to run through a little bit about the plan and some of the high-level recommendations within it. So I have about maybe a 15-minute presentation, and then if we could, I'd certainly love to hear more of your comments at the end. So first of all, a bit about the plan itself. It is the town's first comprehensive assessment of all things recreation, parks, and culture. So that includes not just the places and spaces, the facilities and the parks, but also the programs and the services. So there's a lot of scope within this study. We're very proud that I think it's relatively comprehensive. The goal here is really to give you a guidebook for the next 10 years. And what you'll see, I think on the next slide, I have a bit about it. The benefits of master planning. One, it serves as a guide for the municipality, and that's not just for council or for staff, but also for your community. You have a great volunteer base. You have stakeholders that care very deeply about your parks and recreation culture system. So it gets them on the same page. It's also something that pulls from, and I'll speak to this in a moment, the community voice. This is not our plan as consultants. It is a plan for the community built by the community. It does support we usually say these plans support the municipality in becoming grant ready. That has never been an issue for your community. I would say in the doing about 200 of these plans over the last 20 years, I think your community seems to attract, and I won't say this to your funders necessarily, but you attract definitely your great share of grants, and that's allowed you to build and support a system of parks and recreation amenities that are very responsive to the needs of your community. So kudos to you and to your staff for doing that. And really the goal of these plans is to make them living documents so that they change with trends, values, and growth and other items that occur, other influences within your community. The other thing I would say is sort of setting this up a little bit. We heard very high levels of satisfaction from your community with your amenities, with staff, with your events. So this is not a plan about fixing what's broken. I mean, certainly we have some recommendations around making improvements, but it's a little bit more sort of about trend casting and being future ready for the changes that you're seeing in your community and are to come. Now, a little bit about how we pull these plans together. There's a lot that goes into it. But I would like to focus a little bit on the public and stakeholder engagement program that we've held to date. Initiated last year, it was multifaceted. It included a community survey where we heard from over 400 of your households. We're out at some of your concerts in the park. We've been in your facilities doing pop-up consultations. We've met with and reached out to all of your various stakeholders, from like a minor soccer to baseball to all of your tremendous service clubs. There's been other opportunities along the way. There was a virtual open house. All told, we've had over 650 interactions. We think that represents about 7% of your population having some voice into this, and certainly many of them having gone to the parks and being parts of stakeholder or community organizations. I'm sure it's much broader than that. And bottom of that slide speaks to a few of the other items that we look at through the plan. So I'll just breeze through that a little bit in a moment. But I wanted to highlight I have a couple slides here on what we heard from the community survey. And the survey itself is expanded upon more deeply within the report itself. But what you see in front of you here, this is just a graph illustrating the activities that people like to participate in. Because we've been in this funny period as we emerge from COVID. It's not just since COVID, it's been a little bit before. You had to think back to 2019 and your participation patterns were there. But I think what's interesting is almost all of the activities at the top, and I realize it might be hard for you to read here, but things like walking, events, cycling, fitness, playground, swimming, all of these are essentially low cost. Most of them are outdoor, all ages, all ability type of activities that can happen on one's own time. These are the ones that, and it's why you have invested in your trails system. It's why you've invested in your parks with playgrounds. We recognize that these are the activities that are looked at most favorably, needed the most as we go through the age spectrum. In the middle, you'll see more team sports. Ice sports is certainly high. We know basketball, soccer, and to some degree baseball are very strong in your community as well. And towards the bottom, you'll see more of these individualized types of activities and a little bit more specialized pursuits. Now we flip that around and say, okay, well, that's great, that's what you do. Where do we need to focus our funding? Where do we need to focus our attention within your current system? So this graph here illustrates the priority and support for continued municipal spending. It's one of our tools in the toolbox when we create our recommendations. I wouldn't say we just use this and look at this blindly and say we're just going to fund the top 5 here. That's not what creates a well-rounded recreation system. But I will point out some of the top priorities, and they tend to mirror those participation patterns. Trails, park washrooms, fitness and wellness spaces, playgrounds, event spaces, and space for older adults. You do have an older community, so I think that's reflected a little bit in that as well. So that's a little bit of context I wanted to leave you with. In terms of demographics and growth, you will know this quite well in terms of your population, current and forecasted, but for over the 10-year horizon of the plan, about 16% growth. That's fairly notable for a community of your size. You know, when new developments go up, people notice them, they talk about them, and it does bring new residents to your community. In terms of, and most of these will be occurring in Fonthill, but there are expansions throughout, particularly in Fenwick, for example. We do anticipate, at least over the next 10 years, a continued aging of the population. I think many of the residents within your community continue to stay here, so there's an aging in place. We do see, though, with growth and expansion of more residents, more families coming into the community. So having sort of a balanced recreation parks system is something that we've focused on within this plan. And just very quickly, I won't read through all of these, but the plan goes into extensive detail around various trends that we're seeing within the industry. We sort of put the lens on and to see how that's being reflected here in your local community. Things like, I think the top 3 we've definitely seen: popularity of unstructured outdoor, self-directed outdoor activities, emerging activities. Can't go very far without talking about pickleball, so I might as well introduce that. But you've been able to satiate a good degree of that demand with some new construction out in Fenwick. And just pandemic impacts. We're still sorting through that, but we know parks in particular, but also your recreation department and your facilities have done a ton of heavy lifting over the last few years. I think what we've heard from the public just resonates how important these quality of life amenities and services are to your community. They're more important, more likely than they even were 5 or 10 years ago. And I think what we're hearing from folks is that they want to continue to support that. So based on that public input, we established a number of key values and directions that will hopefully guide the plan's development, well, guided the plan's development and will guide its implementation. We did want to start with a nice sort of catchy vision, and this was made abundantly clear in our many meetings with your RCW department. They are the Department of Fun. I think we started hearing about that, and we saw it in action. So, you know, the vision here is, as we focus into the future, we facilitate fun, but we do so much more. We connect the community, and we enable participation by all. It is the global we. It is not just the town. It's your many volunteer groups. It is everyone who's involved, including the participants. So we take that a bit of a step further. We look at some key goals, and really all of the recommendations in the plan try to achieve one or more of these key goals. We need to reflect on the fact that we need to respond to growth. We need to continue to expand our activity choices. We need to optimize our facilities and parks. We have a tremendous facility here at the Meridian Community Center. In many ways, you're growing into it, and in some ways, you're almost even growing out of it. Like it's a great community destination that's been well used. Enhancing service and capacity and ensuring financial sustainability are always top of mind. So over the next 4 or 5 slides, I'll outline some of the higher priority recommendations that we see within the plan. I believe there's almost 60 recommendations. I won't regale you with those all this morning, but I want to focus on a few that we think might resonate with you and the community. All recreations are supported by fulsome analysis within the plan. So I'll start with, we usually say form follows function, so I'll start with function, which is services, what breathes the life into our parks and to our facilities. This is all documented. This one's in section 5 if you're following along at home. As we emerge from the pandemic, we recognize behaviors have been changing, and there's a need to complete a review of program availability, capacity, and utilization. Much of that is the programming that occurs within the Meridian Community Center, but it could be other spaces as well. There's always evolving needs and evolving trends and patterns. So this is something that staff can start to collect additional data on and work towards over time. Another one I wanted to speak to was the development of a special events policy. Your events are tremendously successful, and your community loves them. They are your tourism within this community as well. The special events policy allows you to document a little bit of those levels of service and just make sure that you're dealing with this consistently over time. And as as requests for more come into play, that you're resourcing them appropriately. The third bullet there, creating an internal staff team to address increasing participation by marginalized populations. Again, this is another internal step that the department and others can take to really recognize that your community is changing. There are more populations and interests within that, from low income, lower income households to newcomers, to persons with disabilities, for example, just making sure that everyone is able to be fully served by your programs. And the last one there, identifying, when we say RCW, that's the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Department, their levels of service and corresponding policy process and resource requirements. This is partly a documentation exercise. It feeds well into some succession planning that you'll be doing eventually in that department as well. And it's making sure that you're funding the areas that need to be funded. So I'll move to infrastructure. Section 6 speaks to recreation and parks facilities. The first bullet there, we coordinated with, I think it was a couple months ago now, you would have had a presentation from KPMG on an organizational review for the RCW department. We fully support that review and its recommendations. One of those key ones that has cross currents with us is developing a formalized operating plan for the Meridian Community Center. The second bullet there, seeking out spaces in schools and other locations for additional programming on an as-needed basis. I think this is something that you're going to see over time, is that, in order to offer maybe additional service to some other areas of your community or more specialized spaces, just recognizing that we do have places of worship, we have schools, we have other service providers that can maybe be a part of the overall delivery system. Thirdly, there's employing a variety of strategies to address soccer field needs. So soccer fields are in high demand in your community, and I think I'll tease a slide that's coming up, but your parks are largely fully subscribed. There's really no room to add much to any existing parks. Sports fields do take up a good amount of space. So we have a number of recommendations to allow that your soccer program continue to flourish. So that includes things like developing an additional field at Centennial Park at the rear of that property. That's been in a plan for almost 15, 20 years now. Continuing to seek strategic access to school fields where needed. Converting the softball diamond at Harold Black Park. So this would be a change in use done in coordination with your stakeholders. We do feel there's capacity in the baseball diamond system to be able to shift that usage elsewhere. It would create an additional soccer field at that park here in Font Hill and allow for additional capacity. So those are a few of the key strategies to promote there. Looking at North Pelham Park, so this would be north of Highway 20, the development of a multi-sport pad and pavilion. So a bit of a refresh of that park. It has some well-used diamonds, and a playground, but some space some shelter from inclement weather, as well as offering some opportunity for use by other users. And then you've received a grant, as I understand, for the redevelopment of the Pelham public pool at Marlene Stewart Street Park, and we just don't want you to lose sight of how your community values that property. In terms of arts and culture, this is section 7 within the report. There was a 2013 cultural master plan that really did a deeper dive into this element. It tends to be very much more volunteer and community driven, but you are able, as we see here, to accommodate some of those needs within your communities from the art gallery and other spaces. So updating that plan over the course of the next number of years, I think would serve that community well. Examining opportunities for public art within appropriate park types and public spaces. As you do, I think this has been something that you've been looking at over the course of a few years as well. So we wanted to just make sure that continues to be a priority. And seeking opportunities to expand arts programming should read in cooperation with local partners there. We recognize not everyone wants to do sports. There's a whole range of interests that municipalities, often in partnership with others, are trying to support. So I think continuing to build that out, whether it be STEM programming or more creative, theatrical or other arts, is an important part of your community. So I mentioned parkland a bit earlier. Parkland supplies are often measured using population-based measures. Pelham is at the lower end of the parkland provision spectrum in Niagara region. We looked at supplies in other municipalities. I think only yourself and one other are at that lower end. Positive and negative in a lot of ways. Your parks are very responsive. That's not the issue, but as you continue to grow, that is where it comes into play. So we would like to, we recognize some new lands will be conveyed through future parkland development, but acquisition may be required to maintain, just to maintain your current levels. There's been a number of changes to parkland dedication in recent months. So the plan elaborates on that as well. But we want to try to maintain where you're at, which is 2.2 hectares per 1,000 people. That's the metric we're using within the plan. Just to keep that going, it's going to require 8 additional hectares by 2031. Again, some of that will come through new subdivision development. You already have some undeveloped parks within your system that will be in part of your capital process. Where the gap probably is this a larger community park that can serve a variety of functions, from sports fields as necessary to sport courts to other forms of recreation and open space and respite. So that is always a gap. It's a gap in a lot of communities because the Planning Act doesn't really allow for large assembly of properties very easily. So that's something that really requires a thoughtful parkland acquisition strategy. Where is the land? How can we work with the community to bring it on stream? So a little bit of work ahead of you there, but we wanted to recognize the needs around that. And there's a couple other recommendations that really, one that flowed out of the KPMG report as well. I think my last, second to last slide here speaks to some specific community parks within your community. It offers a preliminary list of potential improvements that could be achieved over time, often in association with grants, with community partners, and as funding becomes available. There's a lot of detail here. By eventually adopting the plan, the goal is you're not necessarily going to do everything on this list. This is sort of a bit of a running list of ideas, but that reflects issues that we've seen in the communities expressed through these park properties. So Centennial Park, need to upgrade washrooms. You'll see that in a few of your locations, the washroom upgrades, and I think some of that might start we've had trouble keeping up with your capital program because of the progress that you're making. So I think some of that is already starting out of the gate. Addition of that third lighted soccer field, consideration around access and parks maintenance are part of that as well. Marlene Stewart Street Park, washrooms again. You have a new splash pad down there. Hopefully this gets addressed as part of the pool reconstruction. And one item we wanted to suggest there, access to that property is a challenge, has been for decades. Staff have indicated, and we've taken a quick look at it. We're not engineers, but having a secondary exit onto, what is it, Elm Street at the north end of that property might be viable. I think that needs to be looked at. It's a safety issue for many reasons. Most parks should have an access and a secondary exit, for example. North Pelham Park, we've spoken to that. Rolling Meadows Park, that's the former arena park as well, creating a bit of a concept plan for the land that's been left over, really, by that development. And I've spoken to a couple of the other ones as well. For the Civic Square project happening behind us here, advancing that to the next stage around creating an architectural design. So lots of detail. I've probably gone on longer than I said I would already. I'm going to move us towards conclusion here. I just wanted to summarize. So the plan itself is in draft form, contains 59 recommendations. There's priority and timing for each that's identified in section 9 of the report, supported by extensive research and consultation. Most of these do not have direct cost implications. So it's not just a plan about capital. It's about embedding best practices, continuing to make sure that those are in place to support staff and council and the community moving forward. Our next steps, where we hope to go beyond today, is to certainly solicit your input today, but then move to bring this plan out to the public to get additional feedback. That would be through the project website, through an open house. Tentatively, we're proposing to have that here at the Meridian Community Center on the evening of May 2nd. So we'll work with staff to make sure that happens, and then we'll be back in front of council in short order to receive project approval. So that's my presentation. Be pleased to take any questions or comments that you might have.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Langlois. Before I turn it over to council, I'd just like to say that I was impressed with the participation that you had from residents and the community groups. So it definitely makes this study relevant, I would think, from the feedback that you got in from the community. And of course, the one thing that we always take from these recent studies here and plus at the region is the changing demographics. The older our population is getting, and that reflects in the fact that our trail systems are getting so much more use than I would think they were probably 10 years ago. So anyway, thank you for that great presentation, and I will turn to council. Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And thanks for the first step in creating a starting point and doing the hard lifting for discussion based on a lot of data and recommendations. Master plan reports that are designed to provide direction for policy are vital. In my view, the conclusions reached and views set the culture we are looking to create. Views interpreted into words define concepts. I believe these views and concepts are controlled by their philosophy that's been adapted. I intend on expanding on my views and comments on this draft report based on these premises of mine, that every report has a philosophy or certain viewpoint. It seems to me that the viewpoint is individualistic versus reductionism philosophy has been taken. Reductionism is where systems are defined in terms of similar parts combining different activities to accomplish a goal. My view is that available land and buildings to some extent are a finite resource, and that's what you pointed out, that we need a lot more acreage. My view is slightly different. Activities must be combined, interrelated to ensure we maximize the use of the resources available. I believe the Meridian Center is another great example of reductionism, where the gyms are not just a basketball court, a volleyball court, badminton court, pickleball court, meeting area, exercise area. They are all the above, and that's what I call reductionism. In the larger metropolitan areas, my observation is that they have already had to classify their fields and combine their use and function as basketball, lacrosse, soccer, and park venues, and many different things. They call, for instance, Toronto has the BMO field. Hamilton has the Tim Hortons field. They're a multifunctional field. I believe we need to adopt this culture and at this stage, note it in the report as the norm for this community. I understand the report is just for the 10-year outlook, but I believe we need to address this concept now as the change is occurring quicker than ever before. 10 years will pass before We know it. Now let's get into some of the specifics to help everyone understand my point of view and general comments. I will talk about the neighborhood where I live, walk, play, and view in light of my observations. On page 30, you talk about the platform tennis, soccer's 5x5, 7x7 fields, and you've called the old arena field the Meadowvale Park. I'm going to make some very concise comments on these. The comments were water and sewers are required for paddle tennis court, and more soccer fields are required for soccer when referring to the 5x5 and 7x7 soccer pitch. This report calls the old arena field of Meadowvale Park and states it needs to be redeveloped because it doesn't have any parking. I will start with the water and sewer requirement for the paddle club. Yes, it is for the paddle club, but I'm sure council, which I'm part of, had a broader view when approving the $25,000 for water and sewer. It was for the field, and in the future we'll need washrooms for a playground, activity field, where many unscheduled activities continue to take place today, like family soccer games, lacrosse team practices, dog walkers, possible future splash pad, and general, every field, in my view, should have a washroom to some extent. And washrooms are meant for the larger fields. Next, I will deal with the older field naming that's been put in the report. I believe naming defines what the area will become, because a name brings you into context of what you're doing. The two parks where I live are appropriately named. One's called Pelham Center, or Pelham Corners, and Harold Black. The renaming of the old arena field as Meadowvale, in my view, indicates it's for the residents on the street and not for all, and does not indicate inclusivity, which is our strategic plan item for sure. The old arena field was for the old complete community because the arena was for the complete community. Right now, in front of my property, I have cars and vans full of kids parking by my place on the circle. The fact that they are isolated in this case is a benefit for the younger crowd's safety, as some stay at the Pelham Corners Park and the older ones head to Harold Black. I see it all the time. Not only is the Pelham Corners Park isolated, the fact is we have many multicultural people coming in from that I don't even see in the community, which is totally different because these parks are safe and they're sort of out of the way. The report states that you want to make Harold Black more accessible, and I don't think that that quite matches my view of what should be done. When the old arena property was sold, the redevelopment resulted in the loss of the tennis, basketball, and hockey court. In my view, the word redevelopment in a report like this does not produce a positive connotation when talking about parks and recreation. Redevelopment does not bring thoughts of feelings of happiness necessary. Let's leave these redevelopment terms with the planning department reports. The reason the report gives for redevelopment of the soccer fields is that there is no parking. The observation is true if taken in isolation. But when you understand, even with the sale of the old arena property and associated large parking lot of the town continues to provide 24 parking spaces for the area and roadway access to the old arena property, and that's how it's being used. Its use has not been just for the paddle club, but also for the playground and old soccer fields where routinely I have families playing soccer games, lacrosse teams practicing, many outdoor activities being used. Getting back to the word redevelopment of the park and what's been happening in our area, it connotates the impression of tearing out the old soccer goalposts and reducing it to some basic functional use, and that is not what I'd like to see. Observations that are not the direction I as a council would endorse. The proper naming of the field in conjunction with one of the recommendations of the report makes of looking for support and sponsorship is a way where a local developer even came to me and asked whether council would be willing to place their name on a field or park. That's what the larger communities do, and I think that's an observation that you've made in one of your recommendations. I will stop here with my detailed comments as they were specific on items in the area that I live, just meant for examples for a greater concept within this report. I believe in review of these observations, I want to avoid thinking of things in isolation. The naming of fields and parks is critical, and creating a culture of inclusivity in all our areas is important. Appendix 9, page 116, absolutely defines the implementation short-term high priority strategy, essential no-cost items. The 3 items I will address that you prioritize was number 1, monitoring and reporting to council the progress of the master plan. The report identifies what we have before us as a draft, and revisions in reporting and monitoring are to be made on a continuous basis, which are key to the development and achievement of this plan. The second one was 58, the development of partnerships and sponsorships. I've identified that with the naming of the plans. And 59 was to conduct an audit of community spaces, and we know how important that is. That concludes my comments, and thank you again for providing the hard lifting of all the data you've prepared for us to discuss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hildebrand. I will go to this side. Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The secret behind every network and that we see here is the people who operate it, and we've got an exceptional staff who the report pays due compliments to their abilities and their attitude towards the things that they do in the town. I do want to point out one more recent development as far as demographic goes. And the actual, and these are probably leading indicators, but the most recent information from the Chamber of Commerce says that the fastest growing parts of our population are people in their 30s and people under the age of 5, which means that people are working from home and moving to our community. So that indicates that there's going to be a change. Now, I also wanted to ask about some of the partners that we have in the community as well, like our fine library as a contributor, because they're strong performers in the culture part. You know, the library, North Pelham Youth, and the Legion were not included in the list, and they offer all kinds of things. North Pelham Youth Hall, for example, offers card nights on Mondays, and they're getting like 45 people a night there, and the Legion does as well. Now, I think looking at something like this, a 10-year plan like this, to me, this is an opportunity to set a course and a direction. If I look at your report tonight, or today, the recreation, culture, and wellness, we don't really have the same balance of recreation to culture that we have to recreation and wellness. And I'm thinking perhaps about things like art and that type of things. And you said very precisely that not everybody is here for skating or hockey or baseball or soccer. And that was, some of the parents made comments to me when we unveiled the art in the hallway here. And they said, thank you very much for having this event because our kids don't participate in those types of things. And the kids did the same thing. So I'm thinking that perhaps maybe, you know, since this is your 10-year plan, perhaps it's time to think about turning the old town hall into a culture center or an art center. I believe that something like that would attract appropriate grants and things over the next 10 years because it is a monument to the history and the culture of our community. It's a wonderful building when you come down Canberra Road, and it captures the whole landscape, and the way the houses on Canberra Road approach the road is quite different. And then you come up to that corner, and there it is right there, and it's got that wonderful cenotaph right in front of it. So maybe we should be thinking about that as something we can do. And Canberra Road was an Indigenous trail for thousands of years as well. So you've got you've got elements of that, but I think that would attract grants probably as much as we could possibly ask for. I know it's used for quite a few different things right now, and Vicky could tell me that, but we have space. We're going to have new space in the new city hall with a room there. And that building, we can't let it deteriorate. And if we don't use it completely and fully, it will deteriorate on its own. So that's what I'd like to suggest as something to be considered. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor. Anyone on this side? And I see Councillor Wink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Langlois, for the great presentation. There's lots of elements in there that I applaud, particularly the fact that we need larger acreage for Font Hill to develop a multi-purpose park. You know, everything now is in Fenwick, and everything that we're trying to do is in Fenwick, and we're just squeezing everything in there. And it's going to get to the point where the success of the park, and it's a tremendous park, but if you start filling the park with more soccer fields and more baseball diamonds, where are the people going to park and have access to it? So I think it's critical that a large park be developed in Font Hill. Just want to make some comments about Harold Black Park. It's always been a dilemma to me on that park. I don't think firstly, you said that the drainage is terrible. Absolutely. Like, I think the whole park needs to be revamped. The playground is stuck way at the back, and it should be brought forward. The hardball diamond, my kids played there, and the distance between home plate and the backstop is far too, the distance is way too far. So if catcher didn't catch the ball, the runner on first base could go sometimes from first base to third base before it got put in play. It's just laid out terribly. The soccer field, I'm stand corrected on this, and maybe Bob, you can help me on this. For a while there, it was used all the time. I think the usage has gone down a little bit. The softball diamond, your suggestion on the softball diamond is that we turn that into a soccer field. That's the best softball diamond we have in the town of Pelham. And of the organizations that you approached, the softball clubs and the adult slow pitch clubs were not included in there. And I think there's a gap there. You've got to address that. But there's huge opportunity for that park. I don't think turning the softball diamond into a soccer field is the best avenue. I think you touched on the fact that we collaborate with the schools a little more. So Glennie Green's got great soccer fields. E.L. Crosley's got an amazing soccer field, but we haven't touched on any of the other schools for soccer. So maybe there's something that we can do to collaborate with the schools and help them create better fields, because Harold A.K. Wig soccer field is not much to sneeze at. But, you know, if we create soccer fields in concert with the school boards, we can satisfy a lot of the demand for soccer without taking away the baseball diamond from Harold Black. So I think we've got to be looking at that. I'd zeroed in on Harold Black Park, and it's kind of funny that I'm defending the baseball diamond, and when I was a kid, I played soccer, you know, and I had an English soccer coach that said that soccer's not the best sport in the world, it's the only sport. But once I got older and I couldn't run as much, I played slow pitch. So I utilized that diamond an awful lot. And it's, like I say, it's the best diamond we've got in town. I'm not sure on North Pelham Park, we played slow pitch out there. It's mosquito infested. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that, but if I hate like heck seeing us pour all sorts of money into that park if people aren't going to enjoy it because of the insects. So yeah, I like the suggestions. We just got to be careful on what we do with them. I think there's further discussion on some of these points to go forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wink. Councillor Nesnick.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Langlois, for your presentation. It was very in-depth, and it was an excellent read. It's, recreation and culture is sort of a passion of mine, so thank you. I think recognizing that our population is aging, but as well, you know, looking at the Easter egg hunt, seeing all the wonderful families and young children, it's wonderful to see that there is a balance coming into our community, so that's great. Just the one comment that I wanted to make, and it's really nothing to do with you, it's more, I think, as we develop lands with housing and that sort of thing, we need to make sure we preserve lands for recreation, for local community parks within subdivisions, and not take the money as an exchange for in lieu of parks. I think we have to keep those open spaces in all of our new developments as we come about. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I see Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support Councillor Wink's comments about getting more collaborative with the school boards. To date myself, back when I was a kid in Fenwick, we only had one ball diamond, which was the small ball diamond in Centennial Park. And when we had to play Pee Wee and Bantam baseball, we actually played behind St. Anne's Public School. That's where the park was for the Bantams, the midgets, and the juveniles. So way back, we were collaborating with school boards to utilize their facilities. And I think though some fields within a number of the schools may be small, they may fit for some of the soccer issues, as brought up, the 5-on-5 or 7-on-7. Sure, the fields aren't full size, but there may be a way to expand the capacity. And in many cases, most schools have parking. And the usage of these parks are on weekends or evenings, generally when the schools are not in session. So my father had talked to me years ago about, minimize the number of parking lots, but maximize the use of the parking lot. So if you had something that was a parking lot used by one group during the day, then why not utilize it at night by another group? And so I would highly endorse investigation of that. I think there's an opportunity. It is green space within the town already, and it would help preserve it, but it also generates more community interaction and being familiar with the school system, along with utilization and optimization of resources. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any other comments? Not seeing any. If I could have, go ahead, sir.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your permission, I just wanted to clarify a couple of the comments, and I want to thank Council for their constructive feedback on this. We'll absolutely take that under advisement as the plan is finalized, and we're going to be going out to the public with getting that feedback. I think there were a couple of comments I just wanted to make sure are clarified. In terms of park naming, this master plan does not establish names for parks. That's not the intent. You would have a process for that. I think Councillor Hildebrandt was speaking to the former Arena Park. We've used Rolling Meadows because that was the label on the GIS layer that we had for the playground. That's to the west of it. So if we're referring to that incorrectly with the plan, that was not our intent. We'd be happy to clarify that. You have your own process for park naming. We are not co-opting that. So I want to clarify that. And in terms of our stakeholder consultation, ball groups were invited. We will invite them again. Many of them did not, just chose not to participate in our process, but them, along with all of the other groups, will be given an opportunity to come out to the open house and provide their feedback. So I just wanted to leave that with the group. Thank you.
Excellent. If I have one question, perhaps, and I see it on the parkland and trails selected recommendations. So maintain a minimum townwide parkland provision rate of 2.2 hectares per thousand. Now, so that's what ours is. What's the provincial average? Do you know what, like, are we way below, or is 2.2 hectares per thousand? Is that in the ballpark of where we should be?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. It's a good question. There is no provincial average. It's very hard to calculate because every park is different. Even in your community, every park is different. Do you include woodlots? Do you include ravine lands? There's an open space element. But in terms of how we've tried to capture this as active parks, this would be tableland available for, you know, a blending of recreational activities. We looked at the region. You're at 2.2. Lincoln is at 2, so you're just above them. But Grimsby, Niagara Falls, Port Colborne, St. Catharines, or Welland are in the 3.5 to 5.4 range. Typically, as we're doing these plans, we'll often see more urban, rural municipalities like yourself be in the range of about 3 to 4. And again, you're closer to 2. More urbanized communities, the big cities, they will be, you're probably more in line with them in an urbanized park system. But what that reflects is that like Centennial has been used as an example. Other than the potential for maybe a soccer field at the rear, and that would require removal of quite a few trees, there's nowhere else to add amenities to that park. So again, most municipalities are maybe 3 to 4, but the parkland dedication ability to get this through development, you're never going to reach that. So every municipality is falling in their ratios. Many of these, their ratios are high because of legacy properties. They used to have a fairgrounds, or a school moved out, or something like that. So it's a struggle everywhere, but we reflect on just the quality of life that your community wants to see, and we recognize that land is required to continue to sustain that.
Excellent. And I know you couldn't put this next item in the study, but we are blessed with the fact that we do have a 1,200-acre park within a pretty easy bicycling distance in the town. But obviously, I realize how you couldn't put that in your studies. But a heck of a walking trails in that, obviously. Any last questions or comments? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that Council receive the presentation from Mr. Steve Langlois, Principal Planner at Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, regarding the Town of Pelham Recreation Master Plan for information.
Okay. Once again, any further comments? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you. So as council is aware, all our other items under section 5 are timed items and won't commence till 11 o'clock. So we're going to move to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the council minutes from the previous meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated and read. C-07, 2023, regular council meeting minutes, April 5th, 2023.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Did council, upon reviewing the minutes, find any omissions or additions? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That's carried. Moving to item number 7, is there any request to lift the consent items for separate consideration?
Okay, any councillors? Councillor Nesnik?
Yes, I wonder if we could lift 8.1.6, just to have some discussions around those.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, sorry. Oh, I apologize. No, I will withdraw that, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can I withdraw that?
Oh, okay, thank you. Duly noted by the clerk. Any other counselor have any items they wish to lift? Not seen any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So then we'll move to item number 8, consent agenda items for consideration in block. All of 8.1 is dealing with staff reports, so we could probably deal with those in a block and take questions from councillors on any of the staff reports presented.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any counselor that would like to comment, question on any of the staff reports in the consent agenda? Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Meyer, if he's available. We have a report that the Munipass system will begin working in the middle of, I think it said the middle of May or middle of April, to replace our request for service report. Is that, could we have a comment on that?
Sorry, Councillor, could you just repeat the question, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't put on my mic. I'm sorry. Yes, I would like to ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Marr or Derek about the request for service program that we have. And I believe the report said it's going to become live in the middle of this month or very soon or imminently.
Mr. Young, are you familiar enough with the system to comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand it went live yesterday, and that's as far as I know. We've not had any comments or concerns. So, as I said, it went live yesterday, and people in the Public Works Department are working on it.
Okay, Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you. It's too early to be asking then for results, I guess. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have questions on 2 items, 8.1.2 Public Works and 8.1.5, which is the Recreational Department report. I'll start with the Public Works one, and this is to the Manager of Engineering who's present today. The part that's extremely important to me, obviously, is the LED lights. Mainly because our maintenance costs have been $60,000, just under $60,000 per year, and our electricity bill is about $200,000 per year. And the large communities like us have about a quarter of those costs or less because they've implemented the LED lights. That's why I think it's important that the second phase be started just as soon as we could have at the beginning of this year. Can you tell me the status of the PO, and has a schedule been established, and have conversions been started on the second phase yet? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The award has been awarded to Real Term, and they have a PO. We had a kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago, and they are currently working on a schedule on when the replacements will be starting. The main areas they've been focusing on is the decorative lanterns now, because the majority of the cobra heads have now been completed. Once we get a schedule, we'll be able to provide that back to council.
The importance of this conversion is super huge because it reflects on the bottom line of our finances at the end of the year. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to get this done as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on this? Councillor Wink?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Young, I guess. Hopefully you can answer this question. So in our 2023 budget, we allocated funds for parking lot conversion in Ridgeville. This has been an issue that's been going on for quite some time. The summer months and the busy months for the shops are upon us. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the parking lot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have included it in this year's program. We have the layout that was forwarded to us from the mayor. We just need to establish the methodology for getting the drainage from that parking lot to the drain on the south side of the water. We have to make sure that the access for the water tankers are maintained at all the time. So we're just trying to figure that one out.
So any idea on timing? Because I'm going to be getting all sorts of calls from the shop owners about this, and it's something that's kind of urgent.
It is urgent. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is urgent. It is on our program. It's included in our asphalt repair program because it's such a small area of asphalt that's got to go down. We've included in our road patching program. So we are looking to put that at tender shortly because, as you're aware, there's plenty of potholes that have to be repaired. So that's included in that as a joint venture because we'll have one paving contractor in doing both parts.
So is there any estimate on when this can get completed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, hopefully it'll be done in the summer.
In the summer? Okay. I was hoping for a different answer, but that will have to do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I know that I share Councillor Wink's concern on that project. I do know that the shop owners have exercised a lot of patience waiting for this, so we encourage the department to move along as quickly as you can, and I'm sure you will. Thank you for that. Any other comments on this, on any staff reports? Oh, Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the rec department, they comment on the transit update. I'd like to give you my transit update. The transit, regional transit works quite well. The thing that I've encountered over the last few months, I've tried to take it twice. The first time I tried to take it, I don't take it when I'm coming to a council meeting because I'm not sure I'm going to get here on time. Because you can't, the app says you can schedule on your phone, but you really can't, so you have to call in. So you call in about a week ahead of time, and then you schedule a ride. I scheduled it 3/4 of an hour before I had to come to my spin class. My ride was 8 minutes away from my house, but it never moved. And you can see on the phone where it is. So that I end up canceling, and then I got a notice I may be charged extra because I canceled. But that was fine. I could deal with that. I didn't take the ride home, obviously. I just did it a couple of weeks ago again. The same thing. The ride did show up late, but it did get me here. On the way, I was talking to the driver, and what he informed me of was the fact that drivers are not allowed to use their brains to do anything. They have to follow the system. What that means is he's driving by people that, he showed me, he's driving by people that need to be picked up, and he also drives by locations where people need to be dropped off. So I said, that's a real concern. And then I said, well, what's your route like for today? Well, he picked me up at probably 8:45. My spin class is over at, let's see, at 10 o'clock. And he had to come back and pick me up at about 10:15. So he had to go to Grimsby from me, had a ride to do, and he was coming back to pick me up. So then I was waiting inside here at 10:15 for him to pick me up. And then, because he said he was coming back to get me. Generally, you have a van that has the NRT on there. I had a ride that morning that had a blue vehicle, which is fine. Hey, it was a ride, it worked good. But so I sat inside. All of a sudden, I get a message because it was 10 minutes past when he was supposed to pick me up, and saying, your ride is going to leave. You call this number. So I called the number. I said, where are you? Who is this? Because I knew it was from NRT. He says, I'm the driver. I said, well, where are you? Well, I thought it'd be the same color vehicle because I sat there and looked all the time looking for my ride. He was parked down further. He says, well, I'm not parked right exactly in front. I'm parked down over here. I says, well, okay, thanks. I grabbed the ride. No. But what bothered me was the fact that the driver cannot use his ingenuity to come up with drop-off locations. But the good news about that is DC Fenwick Fire Chief was good enough to tell me he had been promoted from the St. Catharines department where he did this work. He's now the regional transfer. And I was talking to him in detail, and he was telling me that the region used 3 different software systems to provide this service. So I guess he's now evaluating the software system. So I'm here to tell the residents things are looking up because we got a guy from our community looking at the scheduling, and I think he understands that the human driving the car has to have some input as to when he's dropping off people and picking them up. Thank you for my long-winded talk.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I will turn to our transit board member, Councillor Olson. I think residents, and I'm sure Bob will back me up on this, that we do realize that this is a huge undertaking for the region. We do realize that there are going to be glitches. I'm hoping that you will take Councillor Hildebrand's concerns to the commission and perhaps have a debate with them.
Well, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Hildebrand. Yes, we launched the new process on 1st of January. Of course, the first objective was to serve the customer and bring together all the different fleets. We have now, I think we have 170 buses, and we have over 400 or 500 employees, and they're governed by three labor agreements, which have to be managed together. And there's been some difficulties, and I think I don't think that the service is going to change very much. The process is going to be optimizing the service that we have, and I think that's going to work. I've been aware of several issues, and I bring them to the attention of the leadership, the general manager, on every occasion. And we're getting in more and more into the operation of the system now with the finances and the consolidation of different systems now. If you have 3 bus systems, and that's going to take a lot of work to get that together. But at some particular point in time, we're not going to be able to plead that this is a new thing and it's difficult to do. It's just not going to work that way, and that's going to have to be an excuse from the past. And I think that's coming pretty quick. So that's my comments on that.
Okay, thank you. I'm also encouraged by the fact that the gentleman that brought this whole system to fruition in the region is Matt Robinson. He's still the main man in charge, and going by his past record, I'm sure he'll take these problems and work with the commission and find the correct solutions. Excellent. So thank both to you, Mr. Olson, and to Councillor Hildebrand. Councillor Olson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and then the other developments will be that there will be taking on the WeGo bus system in Niagara Falls, and the ownership of the new train stations on the GO line. So there's going to be quite a few things that have to happen. And I'm hoping that next month I'll be able to bring a report to council, which is much more complete. And I know that Vicki has a need for documentation and for information to support her grant claims, and I'll see that we get that as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on staff reports? I guess if I could just have one to Director of Planning, Ms. Weens. Again, I didn't give you any heads up on this, and it's just a comment. I see that in the 2023 building permits, I see the accessory units. There was 3 permits, I guess that's taken out. So that would be 3 in the first 3 months of the 23?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, that's correct. That's 3 permits for accessory dwelling units in the first quarter.
And what did, that 3 seems to be a pretty high number for that length of time. Do you have any idea what of the number for 2020, all of 2022?
Off the top of my head, I do not, but I can certainly get that for you and provide that to council.
Okay, excellent. Like I said, it's great to see these because, I mean, hopefully that's exactly what this council and what the government wanted to do was to get these accessory dwelling units up and functioning. And anytime we have one of those built, it takes the place of, opens up a house on the open market, correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. To you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have nothing under item 8.2. We do have one item under 8.3, and that's a thank you letter from the City of Thorold to the Town of Pelham Fire Department. If there's any questions, you could entertain them now.
Okay, well, just on that, I know that to the chief, we just participated in another big fire in the town of Lincoln. Chief, if you could perhaps what and who we sent down to that fire in Lincoln, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we sent our aerial device for elevated streams or the exterior fire attack. We were there for about 12 hours. It's been an extremely busy month in the region for mutual aid calls. All our other neighbors have been involved in other mutual aid calls throughout the whole region. It's been extremely busy month for us. So,
excellent. Okay, thank you. Any comments on the City of Thorold thank you letter? Okay, not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the April 19th, 2023 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Okay, one last time. Any other further comments? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Commencing with the vote then with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart?
yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
Councillor Niznik?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to item 10 on the agenda. The first item is a verbal update from Councillor Olson regarding the Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and to everybody else in the audience and the rest of council. This is my first report on the activities of the Chamber of Commerce. And I wanted to mention the fact that conversations with many of the businesses and organizations in Niagara region, there's more optimism and more confidence than there have been over the past 2 or 3 years of COVID. But at the same time, they're faced with many challenges, including rising inflation, growing input costs, supply chain issues, and unfolding labor shortages. The input costs are really quite alarming, and they include things like the conversion from styrofoam to paper in our restaurants, insurance, which has gone up tremendously, and a lot of insurance providers are choosing not to insure our businesses, and is creating all kinds of issues for affordability for our business community. The chamber has a three-year strategic plan, and we're through the first year of it. And the first objective was to optimize business advocacy, which we've done, and we've had a series of meetings over the last 3 weeks, including a meeting with Vance Badaway, a member of Parliament. The Road to Recovery series, we've had 4 sessions with that. A State of the Region meeting, and our annual meeting, which was yesterday. And we've been supporting through these things regulatory changes that include tax fairness to recognize the need to keep costs down for both businesses and government, preserving the employment lands to support our future business growth, better public transit that creates more flexible workforce, attainable housing to relieve the pressure on wages, as well as on pocketbooks of our residents, cutting red tape, harmonizing permits and fees, and creating more synergies and shared services in the government to create greater efficiencies. The most recent event was the most recent large event was the State of the Region event, and the announcement of the Office of Attainable Housing, which was created by the region, the Office of Shared Services, which is intended to share the resources between the region and the 12 municipalities, and the return of the Niagara Week at Queen's Park, which happens next month, which will be an opportunity to advocate for different things at the provincial level, very much like the event we went to in January with Roma. So those are some of the events that are happening, and I can assure you that it's like probably have 2 or 3 meetings a month, and it's all about entrepreneurship and building a sense of confidence in the business community. And I think the issues facing the business community are probably they're a little larger and growing a little bit bigger, but we have the spirit of entrepreneurship that the chamber is trying to foster. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you for that report, Councillor Olson. Turn to the clerk.
Any questions?
We'll do the vote.
Thanks. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council receive the verbal update from Councillor Olson regarding the Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce for information.
Okay, any further discussion on this report? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Moving to the vote, we'll start with Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And at this time, I think it's opportunity to call a 5-minute break for councillors. We seem to be going down the agenda pretty well. So a 5-minute break, and then we will return to business. Thank you.
Not for 5 minutes.
Well,
Okay, welcome back, council. I see we are all returned. I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving back to the agenda, we're on 10.2, staff reports requiring action. We're going to move to 10.2.2, the lease agreement with Fontaine Platform Tennis Club. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receive report number 2023-0105, lease agreement with Fontaine Platform Tennis Club for information, and that council approve the proposed lease agreement between the town of Pelham and Fontaine Platform Tennis Club, and that council approve the bylaw authorizing the town of Pelham to enter into the said lease agreement and further authorizing the mayor and the town clerk to sign the lease agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or discussion on this agenda item? Don't see any.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to the vote then, starting with Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to 10.2.3, Pelham Summerfest. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved, the council receive report number 2023-0098, Pelham Summerfest 2023 for information. And here we go, that the clerk be authorized to make an application for a special occasion permit for Pelham Summerfest on Thursday, July 13th, 2023, Friday, July 14th, 2023, Saturday, July 15th, 2023, and Sunday, July 16th, 2023, and that staff be directed to bring the necessary festival licensing bylaw for council's consideration at the next regular meeting of council, and the council authorize a variance to the town of Pelham bylaw number 4454/2022, being a bylaw to regulate and control noise in the town of Pelham for the purpose of facilitating the Summerfest musical venues being conducted as part of the venue event from 4 p.m. Friday through 1 a.m. on Sunday, July 16th, and the council authorized the following road closures: the Pelham Town Square from the rear entrance to the Fontaine Plaza to 60 meters west from 4 p.m. Thursday, July 13th to 10 p.m. of the same day. Pelham Town Square entrance off Pelham Street from 7 a.m. Friday, July 14th, 2023 to noon, Monday, July 17th, 2023. Pelham Street from Regional Road number 20, Highway 20, to the south property line of 1419 Pelham Street from 7 a.m. Friday, July 14th, 2023 to 12 p.m. on Sunday, July 16th, 2023. Pelham Street from south property line of 1419 Pelham Street to College Street from 7 a.m. Saturday, July 15th, 2023 to 6 p.m. on the same day. And Pelham Town Square from 150 meters west of Station Street to its termination at Fontaine Plaza entrance from 7 a.m. Sunday, July 16th, 2023 to 5 p.m. of the same day.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or questions on this agenda item? Everything pretty straightforward. So to the this is basically what we do every Summerfest to the director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is.
Okay.
It's exactly what we do.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any comments then to the clerk?
Moving with the vote then, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to item 10.2.4. It's the 2023 review of delegation of powers and duties, administrative authority bylaw update. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that council will receive report 2023-0093, the 23, review of delegation of powers and duties, the administrative authority bylaw update for information, and that council consider the draft amendments to the administrative authority bylaw to delegate additional authority to various municipal staff positions, and the clerk be directed to present the bylaw for council's approval at the next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or questions on this agenda item? Oh, Councilor Nesnick.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question for Ms. Weens, the Director of Planning. Could you just explain what D2, 3, 4, 10, and 11, what that actually would mean, or what those, can you just explain that a little bit for me, please?
To the Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe you're looking at Schedule D. And item 2 is the approval of site plan agreements, and item 3 is the amendment to site plan agreements. So there was changes to the Planning Act last year that requires all site plan agreements, approval authority has been delegated to staff. I think that was Bill 109. So it removed that authority for dealing with site plan agreements and approval of site plan agreements to council and requires it to be delegated to staff. So that's why there are amendments to those two pieces. With respect to number 4 on Schedule D, this is final subdivision approval and subdivision agreements. So currently, the delegation of authority bylaw does give authority to to myself, the director, to approve minor amendments to subdivision agreements. We are suggesting that it would be appropriate to provide final approval to subdivision agreements, as well as any amendments to subdivision agreements being delegated to the director. Typically, when we're at that stage, all the technical approvals have been given, all the Ministry of Environment compliance approvals, the engineering design review approvals, approvals from all the technical agencies, including Conservation Authority in the region, and even review of from our engineering staff have already happened, and they've approved and signed off on all the technical aspects of the conditions of draft plan approval. So there really isn't anything additional for council to approve. So we're suggesting that that could be delegated to the director. The extension of draft plan approval, which was item number 5. Draft plan approval is under the Planning Act, draft plan approval is given for 3 years. And there are, as you're aware, a number of conditions required to approve draft plan approval, and depending on the scope of those conditions and the nature of those conditions, sometimes it can take longer than 3 years to clear all those conditions. And so there are instances where applicants will ask for an extension to draft plan approval. Sometimes they have phased the approval and they've moved ahead with phase 1, and phase 2 or 3 or later phases need to have the extensions because of the the level of effort of work to clear the conditions is significant, and they phase the development. So again, the request is that the extension of draft plan approval, that authority would be delegated to staff. When we have those requests for extension of draft plan approvals, we do have a process where we circulate to agencies and so forth to ensure that the conditions remain relevant, or if there's opportunities, if the conditions are no longer relevant and you need to revise a condition, the agencies can request conditions to be revised as part of that extension process. So again, it's a very technical review process that we go through, but typically it's as a result of the developer needing additional time to clear conditions. Items 10. This is authority to approve development agreements that are a condition of a Committee of Adjustment decision. This doesn't happen very often, but from time to time, it's typically related to consent approvals in the urban area where a lot is created, and sometimes they need to extend the water line and or the sanitary sewer line to service that new lot, and they need what we refer to as a development agreement, and we enter into that development agreement. So the Committee of Adjustment has approved the consent. There's a condition that the staff have requested to ensure that that lot could be serviced, that the municipal services be extended. Again, the applicant is responsible for all those costs associated with extending the services, but we enter into an agreement with them. We receive securities from them for that work, and we're suggesting that those small agreements, they're not very, typically aren't very significant, that authority be delegated to staff to approve. Again, with review of the agreement by the town solicitor. And then with respect to item number 11, which is the minor zoning bylaw amendments, there is a policy in our official plan that allows for delegated authority for minor zoning bylaw approvals. This too was a change that happened in the Planning Act, and then we had amended the official plan to provide the policy basis for the delegation of minor zoning approvals. This would allow for, again, some streamlining. Those minor zoning bylaw approvals would be such matters as lifting a holding zone, a temporary use, or an agricultural purposes only zone. So they're very, again, they're very minor. They don't really change what is happening on the ground. And so to, I guess, provide for some streamlining, it's recommended that minor zoning bylaw approvals in accordance with the town's official plan policies be delegated to staff.
Councillor?
Great, through you. So thank you very much, Mrs. Weeds.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this item? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So commencing with the vote with Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to item 10.2.5, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved, the council receive report 2023-99, 2023 updated code of conduct for elected and appointed officials policy and a complaint protocol for information, and that council adopt policy S201-15 code of conduct for elected and appointed officials as revised, and that council adopt policy S201-16 being a complaint protocol for use under the policy to S201-15 for elected and appointed officials, and also the municipal conflict of interest complaints.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or questions? I see Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like some guidance here because I want to talk about the complaints process. And I also, I recognize the fact that I spoke about it at one other time and I lost a vote on it. So can I talk about that at the same time as this item?
I'll ask the clerk.
I may have to defer to the CAO on this, but since it's a revised policy and coming under a new vote of council, I believe you have the opportunity to raise your concern again.
Mr. CAO?
Look at that. Our clerk just innately knows, even without having the history. So that's certainly correct, but more to the point, I think those objections were brought up last term of council, and so certainly we've got a clean slate. But also, we're trying to encourage a fulsome dialogue about the regime that will apply to you. So I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to say their piece.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Councillor, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that guidance. I'm going to have to vote against this, the motion, because in the last meeting that this was discussed, the narrative was created that people who make complaints are somehow vexatious and frivolous. And I choose to find that people are pretty reasonable. I don't think that they go out of their way to make problems. And part of the goals of being on a council and the democratic system that we have is to be accountable for things. And this is a way of holding us accountable as a complaint process. And we move immediately to a formal complaint process without an informal session where people can talk and come to some kind of a reasonable agreement between themselves. So there you have an administrative event turn into an emotional event, and we could get things corrected. And I think that's what we should have as an informal complaint process attached to our bylaw in place of moving immediately to a formal process. Now, the informal process would look something like this. Tell the member that their behavior, and members defined in a number of ways, it includes volunteers, but tell the member that their behavior appears to violate the code of conduct, request that the member stop the behavior. Second thing is document the relevant information such as the date, time, location, and other people present. And we would encourage people to use the informal complaint process as a way to immediately address behavior and settle the matter. And I think the key thing is the fact that it's immediately addresses the matter, because we don't want things to fester. And that's why I'm going to have to vote against this motion, because the lack of an informal complaint process that I think would benefit everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councilor Olson. Would we be commenting on, oh, I'm sorry. So should we comment on the whole thing, or should we comment on his remarks? Oh, okay.
Group wishes.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? We've referred Councilor Olson. He will not be voting for this item. Any other comments and questions? And Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a comment with regards to Part 13, which is the improper use of influence. In general, I'm in favor of the Code of Conduct. I think it's been well written, and I think it's very appropriate. This is the area that I have an issue with. And in particular, in 13, it has to do with 13.4 to 13.6, which deals with the solicitation of funds and support. In my view, the lack of specificity and direction, excuse me for a minute, allows the possibility of having members of council becoming involved in fundraising activities not necessarily approved by council and the municipality. Before I make a motion requesting deferral or additional direction on fundraising guidelines to be established and endorsed, and a report being returned to council at appropriate, staff seems an appropriate amount of time, I'd like the possibility of the council having a fulsome discussion on the item to come to some consensus in this area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And before we have before Councilor Hildebrand puts forth his motion, any other comments on this item? Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a response to Mr. Olson's, I guess, concern with the Code of Conduct. I'm just trying to think that, I would hope that on a committee of some common sense would come forward with regards to having those informal conversations with regards to behavior and, or you're a little out of line here, or, that was inappropriate. I would think that those would happen. And then, hopefully that would correct the situation. I think I think the complaint process that you've got in place is for those times when serious things happen that need a solid process such as this. So I will be voting in favor of the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess, go ahead, Councilor Olson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councilor Niznik. I'm not proposing that we remove the formal complaint process. I'm proposing that we interject an informal process. And I would say to you that, yes, we can hope that this is what happens, but we have a corporate responsibility to make sure that we document our processes, and that's why I'm proposing that we have a written informal process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Because you realize, of course, also that the citizen can lodge a complaint to the IC Commissioner without the councilor's knowledge. So obviously, that's just going to go right to the formal. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, that right of the citizen or resident or whoever would stay in place, and if they didn't want to use an informal process, they would go automatically to the formal process. But I would like to see the people go through the informal process first if they choose, and it's up to the resident who's the complainant to choose. So, in interest of cost, because the Integrity Commissioner costs a lot of money.
Well, I can assure you that the Integrity Commission, the investigations that I've had on me, the amount of money was not foremost in the residents' mind. So myself, I don't think there's any place or any need, let's not even need, any place for the informal conduct or informal route. It's going to be 99.9% of the residents will already have made their minds up that they have been wronged and that they will want to either go to the ombudsman or to the Integrity Commissioner, right or wrong. I would support this code of conduct revision exactly the way it is. Anyway, Councilor Olson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, of course I disagree.
Yep, no problem, sir. Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I find it somewhat ironic to say you want to codify an informal process, which now becomes a formal process, to follow a formal process. I agree with the intent of Councillor Olson. Common sense should prevail to do it informally, and as a last resort, people should move to the formal process. But I think to try and codify or elaborate or dictate a particular process that's considered, quote, informal, no longer keeps it informal. It now makes it regimented. So I'm in favor of the code of conduct, but I'm not supportive of writing in an informal process.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Actually, you've already, I guess, Councilor Olson, you've spoken numerous times on this. Go ahead.
I've kept my comments short, Mr. Mayor, like the last one where I disagreed.
Yes.
In this one, I'll say that an unwritten informal process is not worth the paper it's not written on.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. So any other discussion? If not, we'll have Councilor Hildebrand. Do you want to bring forth a motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like the rest of council to comment on it. Maybe it's just my concern about the fundraising issue, and if the rest of council feels comfortable with the language, I will approve it as such.
Okay.
It's just that I find it for myself a slippery slope when I can be asked to support some charity, and it could be called the Hildebrand charity, and the rest of council may not approve of that fundraising activity. Thank you.
Okay, so here's my, if I may be allowed, my take on this. So council has donated money to the Race Road erosion project. We are not in charge of that project. The project right now is short a lot of funds in order to go forward, and I have every intent to approach people that I have got to know in my last 4 years in the community to ask them if they would be willing to support this project financially. If you were to put any restriction, I don't know what strict restrictions you're thinking of putting in, well, then that would forbid me to make this project known to citizens. That would be, once they were aware of it, could very easily want to contribute to this, to whatever the project is, whether it's this one. I can't think of another one coming up that I would, obviously the one that I solicited funds for and got in trouble was another town project, and that one was certified or approved by council, as you know. So myself, my own personal feelings, council, I guess I know where you're coming from, but I think it's, I don't think it's needed from my point of view. That's my point of view. Thank you. Should we go? We'll see if any councillors. So we will open it up to, of course, any councillors' comments. You've heard Councillor Hildebrand. He hasn't put the motion forward yet, so wait, we probably shouldn't be discussing it without a motion. I'll go to the clerk on this.
Well, I think through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hildebrand has asked for some consensus. He's willing to support it with the majority consent of the council. So providing some latitude here for council members to voice their opinion might be helpful.
Okay. So you're comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments on this? Councillor Wink.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I kind of support what you're saying. As a councillor, as a mayor, whatever, if we're going to be going out soliciting funds, we're not soliciting funds for personal gain. That solicitation of funds is for the betterment of the community, or the betterment of a charitable organization that is part of the community. So I think even if you look at something like Summerfest, if we're short of sponsorship and I put up my hand and say, well, I know someone that might be willing to sponsor Summerfest, and I approach them for a $2,000 donation, I should be able to go ahead and do that without having handcuffs on me. And again, it's for the community. We're not doing it for personal gain. So I agree with your comments.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on this item raised by Councillor Hildebrand? Not seeing any. I turn back to you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand all your concerns, or my concerns, and I don't want to limit anyone or handcuff anyone. I was thinking of the ability of our lawyer and our CAO to craft some great words that wouldn't handcuff anyone. But if the rest of council does not deem that as necessary, I'm satisfied with the code of conduct as it states. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hildebrand. Thank you for that. So then, if there's no other questions, then I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So commencing with the vote with Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And sorry, I missed Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
And now back to you, Mayor Junkin.
Okay, yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. So we are almost at our scheduled time for our next event. We need a few minutes just to kind of set up the technology and maybe talk to the delegates. So if we could have just a short pause from council, Mr. Mayor, for a couple minutes to do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
it slipped away fast.
Went perfect.
I just want to bring up that the Station 2 Fenwick Firefighters Spaghetti Dinner is Saturday, April 29th.
You can talk. When we're ready to wrap up, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, because it's just as a general announcement, because it's before the next council.
Just before we adjourn.
Yep. Good. Okay. Well, that went good.
For a while, I thought we were going to be sending it
Yeah.
Too much work.
No, it's actually, I know, it's pretty good, so, no, everything went good.
So Councillor Kerr wanted to mention the spaghetti dinner of the firefighters. Can we do that before we move into camera?
See why not?
Okay. So
Okay.
maybe just ahead of 15.
Our membership, our viewership will plummet.
Turns red?
Camera.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There's no point.
No. Excellent.
Because that's what I was just thinking. No one will be around to see it.
Nope, exactly. Okay.
Just give Sarah a minute to run them through, and she gives us the all clear.
Yep.
We'll go back.
Yep. So
So our consultants are going to go first.
Yes.
They're zooming in.
okay, and that's how come we got to do all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Bahar there
Yep.
is our lead consultant.
Okay.
So you can introduce the consultants. I will give you a little preface of who they are, and then you
Okay.
can turn the floor over to the consultants.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Yes. I don't know. We're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that break. Moving now back to our section 5, delegations. We have today a presentation from Hydratech Geomorphic Limited, Dr. Bahar, Managing Director, and Glenn Switzer, Senior Engineer, and they're going to talk to us about the River Road area and the drainage study on that. So, Mr. Mayor, if you want to welcome them, they'll be joining us on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bahar, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and respected councillors. My name is Dr. Bahar SM from Hydratech Geomorphic. Our company was retained by the town of Pelham to do a drainage study of the Far Weber and River area study area. First, I would like to explain the agenda of the meeting of a presentation. Number one is the objective and scope of the study. Then drainage area analysis of the study area and historical and existing condition of the drainage condition. And findings of the technical analysis, which includes hydrologic, hydraulic, and floodplain mapping. And then we would identify and make a recommendation to how the issues can be resolved. So objectives of the study includes the residential and farm properties in this area have been experiencing drainage issues and flooding. The town of Pelham has undertaken a drainage study to understand the drainage concern and pertinent issues. The study area is within the jurisdiction of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, NPCA. So you can see this map here. Our study area is compounded by is about 1.27 square kilometer. It is bounded by the Far Weber and the River Road, and in the west we have the Victoria Avenue, and the east we have the Church Street. The types of data used for this analysis are the rainfall data. We also use hydrogeologic soil data, land use data, topographic data, which we collected, hydraulic structure data, and historical area image. Total area for hydrologic analysis is about 2.74 square kilometer. And for the hydrologic analysis, we delineate the whole area into 21 subbasins. First, we collected and reviewed the background data and reports, perform field works to identify the topographic mapping data and obtain topographic data and historic mapping data of the study area, perform on-field fluvial geomorphic assessment, development of hydrologic models for the subbasins within the drainage area, developed a one-dimensional hydraulic model to determine the flooding extent, identify properties under the flood risk, and recommend mitigation options. Here it shows the flow chart of the work we have done. First, secondary data, field work, hydrologic modeling, then hydraulic modeling, flood inundation, flood drainage issues, and then mitigation measures. These are the flow steps we followed for this study. Field data collections, first we visited the site. There were about more than 14 culvert crossings. We collected these culverts, their diameter, length, width, and also invert and overt elevations. And we also took pictures of each of the culverts, as you can see here in these pictures. The culvert at, these are the two park culverts between 275 and 285, where there is a severe flooding issue causing obstruction of the flows. So flow obstruction is due to the high ground elevation and the vegetation in the open channel in the drainage area. So first, I would like to explain the historical condition of the study area. If you follow the historical data, say 2002 data, you will see the blue line is the flow condition which happened in 2002. But the yellow line shows the existing condition. That means the drainage line was modified, altered in this area. And in 2010, you can see this drainage line has been modified. And the flow change location was, at that time, was in the Far Road, the crossings. Here it shows the 2018 data, and you can see the flow change location because the landfill was changed, modified, drainage condition was changed. Flow change location has moved from the Far Road to the middle of the study area. And the zoom bigger picture also shows the same location, where the yellow line shows the original channel location, where the blue line shows the divert locations, modified locations. So again, the 2020, you can see the flow line has changed again because the drainage was modified, land was altered, channel was altered, and there is a 125-meter long culvert between 265 to 275 Victoria Road property. First, it's run about 35 meter, then right angle and goes along the Victoria Road and discharges to the culvert at the outlet of near the Victoria Road. So these kind of alteration has been done within study area, and which has caused the main flooding in this property in these areas. So here is a 2022, again, the long culvert and the yellow line, which indicates the existing conditions. So we did the technical analysis for the whole study area, and this picture will show at a glance what is happening here. The first right-hand side here, it shows the Far Road crossing, and its top elevation shows the Far Road elevation is 176.3. The culvert at this crossing has 175.2. And in between the study area and in the Victoria Road, you will see the high ground elevation. Before here picture, you have the west channel and the east channel. West channel goes to the Victoria Road and discharge to the Welland River. East channel goes to the right and then go further for the discharging. So you can see here in the ground middle, the ground middle elevation is about 175.9, whereas invert elevation is lower, and the land is almost flat between these two. But in the high ground elevation, where the culvert is between the 265 and 275 Victoria Road, there is a blockage because of the high flow. And the culvert, it has very undersized, the flow cannot go through it. That provides a backwater effect. So these are the main reasons why we can see the flooding in this area. So we have done the technical analysis for the whole study here and did the hydrologic and hydraulic modeling. And after doing the hydraulic modeling, you can see even the 2-year flow versus 100-year flow. The 2-year flood is the left side, 100-year is the right side, which shows the flooding in the study area. And this is the inundation map for the 2-year, 5-year, 25-year, 100-year. And near Victoria Road and Weaver Road, the extent of inundation appears to be higher. High inundation has also been observed near the Far Road. The extent of flooding near the Church Street appears to be very moderate. And at the east side of the Weaver Road, there seems to be a minimum degree of inundation. This are through the maximum inundation, which is blue color shows the 2-year and the orange color is the 100-year. In the West Channel, a 0.6 meter diameter culvert, which is between 265 and 275 Victoria Road. This culvert is providing backwater effect and there's flooding in this area. This undersized culvert provides backwater and flooding even for the 2-year flow. So this is the flood inundation map with the building footprint. You can see here the bounded area of the Far, Weber, and Victoria River Road has the maximum extent of flooding and inundated water surface elevation compared with the other segment of the study area. Considerable number of properties between 990 and 1,000 Weber Road properties are flooded. 225, 285 Victoria Road properties fall within the flooded area. The next slide will show the existing flooding analysis. So you can see here the drainage issues are coming because of the land filling and alteration of the drainage system. Alteration of historical channel course and hydraulic capacity, undersized hydraulic capacity of the culverts. These are the main issues we found for the flooding. So next we would go for the recommendation and proposed mitigation for these issues. You can see here that this area is under the policy of Ontario Regulation 155/06 and Planning Act, specifies several development setbacks associated with the flooding and alteration of the watercourse. Following these guidelines before planning and construction a new building or any advancement of land near the floodplain can be eliminated the flood risk. Assessing the drainage issues, some mitigation options has been proposed. First, increase the culvert size at Victoria Road, then install the culvert crossing for the upgraded culvert, reinstall the historical watercourse between 990 Weber Road and 285 Victoria Road, increase upgrade culvert capacity at the Victoria Road culvert crossing, and implement natural channel design condition to route from the Far Weber to the Victoria Road. So we've found the 3 mitigation alternatives. Number 1 is the existing culvert on the Victoria Road should be increased to 50-year return period capacity. Next is the number 2 is overland flow channel should be constructed passing between the 285 Victoria Avenue and 990 and 1000 Weber Road properties. That will increase the flow and reduce the flooding. And another important thing is happening because there is a tributary west side of the Weber Road which is coming to the study area. These tributaries flows can be diverted through the drainage ditch of the Weber Road and then discharged directly to the Welland River. All these 3 options will help to mitigate the flooding in the study area. So existing culvert under the Victoria Road should be sized for 50-year return period. Now we have tried for the existing culvert, it is smaller, 0.6 meter. So we have tried the 0.6, 0.8, 1 meter, and we found that if the culvert is increased to 1 meter, no flow in stagnation happens in the study area. So next alternative option is the substantial flooding is happening and inundation can be observed in the culvert area, and these are the diameter culvert. The second option is we tried with whether it can have a 20% capacity of the culvert or closing the culvert. We found with the diversion flow, overland flow between the 990 Weber Road and the Victoria Road, and that will provide the flow going through the channel, and at the same time, no flow flowing through the culvert is help very much. The third option we are considering is to close the channel passing between the 265 and 285 Victoria Road and diverting the flow to the proposed overland channel through the 990 and 1000 Weber and 285 Victoria Road. or to increase the diameter of the 125-meter culvert such that it can convey a considerable portion of flow without causing any backwater throughout the channel and the surrounding area. So the final third option we are considering is to divert the two tributaries coming from the north of the Weaver Road and convey this flow to the main channel through the south of the Weaver Road, and will be directly diverted to the wetland neighbor through the roadside ditch north of the Weaver Road. So for these options, you can see here, model result shows that with the application of the option 1 and option 2, option 3, the most of the area now becomes flood free. So our recommendations are that these 3 options needs to be implemented. And once these are implemented, then the study area will be flood free. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Sorry, sirs. Sorry. Going back to I'm trying to find it. You had the picture of the culverts, and you had the picture of the culvert going under Victoria Avenue, but the size, and then and I believe that was, I still can't find them here. And also in Figure 1, you had the one culvert going in between the 2 residences, I guess. Obviously, the Figure 1 culvert is tremendously quite a bit smaller.
Yes, this is the culvert going through the Victoria Road.
Yeah, and that
Figure
is
number 4.
and that is one that you obviously have. Yeah, there's the picture. Yes, so that Figure 1, you have labeled that as a major concern going forward, right?
Yes, that culvert is about 125 meter long and its diameter is 0.6. And this culvert provides flooding even 2-year return period flow. 2-year means every 2 years the rainfall happen, the highest rainfall happen, that can cause flooding. But these, when you have a higher frequency return flood, say 25, 50, 100 year, all the area will be flooding. So the culvert between 265 and 275 Victoria Road, it was undersized, and the land between this property where the natural channel was a field, and the channel doesn't flow in the main channel. These are the main cause of the flooding in this area.
Excellent, thank you. And this probably wasn't part of your study, but did you determine the number of acres, or hectares going forward, that is involved in this stream or not?
Yeah, like for within the study, it is 1.27 square kilometers. And but we have done the larger area, which is about 2.74 square kilometer. But study area is 1.27 square kilometer, if I'm not wrong. Like
Okay.
See,
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions at this time. I'll turn to council again. Any other? Oh, Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Behar. Did you have the chance to evaluate what the effect of the maintenance of the culverts and ditches and the vegetation, and what sort of percentage of the problem that would cause?
We found some of the culvert was clogged and it requires maintenance, and especially in the Far Road area, that culvert was clogged, and even it was about 0.4 or 5 meter diameter, but it effectively is very low. But other culverts in the Weaver Road, we found that they are very, very good conditions. So yeah, depending on the locations, depending on the site conditions, the culvert crossings requires maintenance, but not every day, but you can say that that requires some maintenance so that these culvert crossings are not clogged.
Yeah, thank you. And what about the ditches, the maintenance of the ditches and the vegetation?
DGS maintenance is, I don't see any many concern. We didn't see any that much of clogging over there other than the culverts.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. I did have one other question, and forgive me for failing to ask that. In your study, then you have determined, if not now, but historically, the water flowed in that channel. It has historically flowed from Far Road west into the Welland River. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Before 2002, the flow was going starting from the Far Road to the west to the Victoria and to Welland River.
Excellent. And that flow was changed with bringing with.
Yeah, flow was
landfill.
changed after 2010. After 2010, the flow change location has changed in the middle of the study area.
Yes.
Here is the picture.
With the addition of landfill into the drainage area.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Councilor Olson, wait, any other questions? Okay, then Councilor Olson, we'll go back to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. So we have a report now, and what would be the disposition of this report now as far as you're concerned? Because we have alternatives here, and we have a definitive report. How will we deal with this with the region and the other interested parties in this?
I think we have senior engineer Glenn Switzer. Glenn, are you here? Glenn. All right, so let me explain. Because we have done the technical study, and based on the study, we have found the issues. But okay, here, I think Glenn is here.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation here, and I've dealt with this in other situations in my career. A couple of things that I'd like to put forward to you that you might want to consider as far as going forward. It's not necessarily option one, option two, or option three. It might be a combination of different options. For instance, the long culvert, you might want to just keep that the 125 meter culvert. You may want to keep that in place just to take your everyday little trickle flow that happens when you have a small rainstorm, and then recreate the channel through the site to eliminate the flooding. But that would only then have water in it when you have a more significant rainfall event. But it looks like the culvert under Victoria Street that needs to be increased to the 50 or 100 year is creating a significant backup. So it may be a combination of the three different options that Bahar has presented. The other thing that just dealing with the other municipality that I work with that you might want to consider, and that is the consideration you might have about doing work on private lands. So I know that there are a number of municipalities whose policies state that we shouldn't do any work on private lands, that if the municipality is going to be involved, you may want to consider leaving it up to the residents here to give you some kind of legal right to go in there to do the work. So either provide you with ownership of, say, the long culvert or an easement over the channel so that you can protect it in perpetuity from people building sheds on it or in the future changing the grades in that area. So that's something else that you might want to consider. And with that, I'll leave it with Bahar to go forward.
Yeah, I think Glenn is correct. If whatever he said, that is the same opinion we have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I think it'll probably be a combination of solutions here that it end up being the proper way to go. But I'd like to hear what the CAO has to say about the plan going forward.
Mr. CAO?
Well, I mean, there's a small answer and the big answer. And the small answer is procedurally, a bunch of the conversation I think Councillor Olson is hinting at would come when we get to the staff report. The bigger answer in the staff report, sorry, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but it speaks for itself. It has some staff recommendations there. This is, as was said, a really interesting, in fact, in a couple of decades in municipal work, I don't have a similar situation here. I've never seen what amounts to, I guess we can call it a neighborhood. You can't call it a subdivision because their homes created here without the usual planning process. There's no site plan applied to these lands. They were never designed to work together in concert the way is true in, say, anywhere in Fenwick or Fonthill, or more or less anywhere else in Ontario. And so because of the unique way that ultimately residences were created in the area, we find ourselves here today. And fundamentally, what needs to happen is a conversation about how do we go forward, and very quickly it's going to get to where does the money come from. Understanding that when we talk about changing drainage or deal with bad drainage problems in the middle of Fonthill, every one of those residents pays money every month for water and sewer services, and it's included, so that if there's a problem with drainage in your front yard in the urban area, you already pay us money every month, and it gets fixed because you're paying into a system, and the system doesn't say, well, that one house has a problem, so we're going to bill it. Fundamentally, the municipality responds through a combination of engineering and public works. And we don't have that system here. And in rural areas, traditionally, the answer is a drain, a municipal drain, as is discussed in that report. The fundamental concept on a municipal drain is if it benefits your property, you're going to pay into it. That's the thing in a nutshell. And so there are some technical ways forward, which this report, I think, quite succinctly identifies. It shows what's going to happen, that flooding will continue to happen. If there's no action, flooding is going to continue. You've seen that part of it can't handle a 2-year storm, forget a 50 or 100, because of the way the topography of the land is now. And there are no municipal controls over the topography of the land because, to reiterate, there's no plan of subdivision. There's no, all of the things that normally go in aren't there because ultimately of how this area was developed and or may still develop in the future. So there has to be a sort of a difficult conversation, a couple of ways forward, and whether it's those technical fixes, some maintenance by the town, people coming together to form a drain, it's going to take some work and some money. And what we need to understand is fundamentally it's a discussion about what are the technical fixes, and then who pays and why and how much and how is that apportioned. And that is the conversation that needs to be had. And for that, you also have to understand the context of how we got here. And that's my not so short answer.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, CAO, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering about are there any steps that we could take, immediate steps, and hopefully low-cost steps, to alleviate the problem? Because that one slide of the 100-year storm there, whatever it was, is really quite alarming. What would happen to the farm and to the farmers and to the properties there? And I wouldn't, knowing myself, and our family, our future's kind of tied up in our property and our houses, and I don't think I would feel very comfortable the way things are at the moment. So, just is there anything that we could come up with in our alternatives for immediate steps to alleviate some of the problems?
I'm sorry, who was that question addressed to?
I would leave that to the CAO, please, and then I
So,
don't
so if
expect
I
it-
may, if I may,
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
if I may. So this is just one presentation. We have a staff report coming, and we have another report coming. So perhaps, if I may suggest, Councillor, these questions are a little premature now, but hang on to them until we get the whole picture, perhaps?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but how could it be premature? I've been thinking about this all morning.
Well, do you not want? Yes. Are you comfortable with that then, Councillor?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor, and I take that guidance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. Any other questions on this report that were just had presented to us? Okay, not seeing any. I thank Mr. Bahar for your time on this difficult situation and for the options presented by your group.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, and I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the Town of Pelham drainage study for the Far, Weber, and River Road area presented from Dr. Bahar and Glenn Switzer of Hydra Tech Geomorphic Limited for information.
Okay, thank you. One last time, any other further discussions? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, starting with Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's received. Thank you. Carried. Moving to the next item on the agenda, we have a delegation from John and Joyce Sonneveld. Read the same study, and if you want to welcome.
Seinfeld, you have the floor. And I believe, John, you're doing the president. Oh, nope, I see both of you are. Okay. Thank you for coming before council, and like I say, whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for this opportunity to speak to you about this far drainage issue and the impact on our farmland. If you're not sure, if you look at the map up there where to the right-hand side is an open field where there are no houses. That's our farmland, and we own that. And as the studies did show in the past, that the drain did go from far through the easterly side to the river. We're just clarifying that, and the studies had showed that. I'm John Sonneville, by the way, and this is my wife, Joyce. We're the owners of Riverbend Farms. Just a bit of background in the area. Just again, show you the map over there where is farm ground and where houses are. And there's photos showing where the flooding are and where the original drain used to go. I'm not sure if we can get the next photo up there, possibly. Yeah, there's all flooding onto our ground in our farm fields. And that's not just when you get to spring thaws. That seems to happen about every decent rain because it all gathers in that low spot there. And as the reports did show, the drain that used to go that way is now not maintained and unfortunately built up and moved around and everything else. As it shows from like 2006 to 2020, the change, the maps there. From it was 2006, there was no housing. You see the drain where it used to go through there and and now 2020. So everything has changed over there, as the reports have said. So there's no deniability about that. And since 2020, 21, we have noticed major flooding on our property every time we get rain, and we lose crops and it floods out and it makes a big mess of our property and we can't farm it. We've contacted town staff about it. We've met out there. We've even hired Sid Vanderveen from Burnside Developments out of London, and they provide a report back, I believe it was in 2021 or 2022, to the councillors then and to staff, and confirmed exactly what we thought. And then now the ADAR did the exact same thing and confirmed exactly the same thing as we talked about. The study acknowledges that the subdivisions or developments in the area altered the drainage and patterns between Victoria and Far, and these alterations have resulted in additional flows being directed onto Far. When it builds up, it's just going to sit in a pool and go back on our land, which is unfortunate. under the common law surface water that is collected and directed onto the land that does not naturally receive it can be held liable for damages. Therefore, the report proves that the town is in a position of liability for directing water onto our land, because they're accepting all this from what's happened with the housing and the development. And we're not blaming anybody in general. It's just everything's been diverted there, and it goes on to the far road ditches, and when it floods, it ends up on our property, unfortunately. Has the council read Sid Vanderveen's comments about the staff report? I don't want to read more stuff than you guys have all read. If you guys have read it all, then you're up to date on it all. Like Sid Vanderveen, our engineer, commented on the staff reports, and everything's good. Then I'll carry on and try and keep it as short as I possibly can. As a solution, staff mentions cleaning out far road street ditches. All that would probably do is just put more water down into the gully. It doesn't make it go anywhere else. So that's an option, but it's not going to resolve water going on our property. It might make the water go faster down there and go into the bowl and stay there, but it's just still got to stay there. A significant part of the staff report focuses on resolving drainage issues in the subdivision or the housing area or those lands that are up there, but does not address the issue of the water being directed onto our property at all. Solution, as Sid Vanderveen comments about the town road authority, can indeed initiate a petition, and it only will take a single signature for them to initiate a municipal drain because it's a road ditch. They can do it, and we're not sure why the staff has not done it. We understand there's costs and a lot of stuff involved here. As all municipal drains go, whoever water goes into it pays. North of Weber Road to a golf course to everywhere. It's a whole great big project, and nobody likes to have water on their property. Unfortunately, somebody's got to help pay for it all. Not one person, not one town, but it gets spread across everybody. That's how municipal drain works. It helps for everybody. Now the town has all the information from us, 2021, from Sid Vanderveen's report, 2022, and IDEC report in 2023, where we just heard it all. And all that information points to the exact same solution. A municipal drain from far to the river would solve all that problem. Also saying that in the future, we understand that there's talking about infilling all those two places there, which can be all houses or condos or however that is. I don't know what they're going to call it. There's to be more water put into the ditches, put down in the gully. It's just going to create more water, because water on roofs and on driveways just moves a lot faster. So this problem's not going to solve itself. Something has got to be done between FAR and the river and the FAR roads, road ditches. It's all a big problem there. So in closing, the outcome of the town's decision on resolving the drainage issue will direct us on how we move forward to protect our farmland. So anybody got questions for me that I can maybe possibly answer?
Thank you for your presentations, John and Joyce. Thank you. I will indeed turn to council. I have a few questions, but I'll wait till the council has the first crack at it. Or Council Nesnick.
Hi, good still morning, so good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for coming with your concerns. So I'm understanding that there is a ditch on each side of Far Road going
Yes.
north and south?
Yes, there is, yes.
And traditionally, where prior to the building on the west side, where the Far development is, where did the water run? Does it run south to the river? Or it ran?
Sorry, the ditch on the west side of FAR?
Yes.
Yeah, the ditch on the west side of FAR ran west to the river.
Okay.
It automatically ran there. Back in one of our reports that we handed to council back in 2021, we had an affidavit signed from the previous guy who cleaned that drainage ditch out, Westing Excavation, I think he's from Low Banks. And he cleaned that ditch out for the farmer who owned that property before, and it went from right to the edge of FAR all the way west to the river. And the farmer farmed it that way, and that's the way it's been done since.
So now it's reversed, correct?
Well,
or it goes nowhere and it just floods?
The problem is, and we're not blaming anybody again, when development happens, people with the highest dirt usually wins. The more dirt, the better. You can build it higher, and unfortunately, it's went into the ditch and altered the ditch, and that's all been altered, and it stopped the drainage.
And then tell me a little bit more about the ditch on the east side of Far Street, which would be right where your driveway is.
Yes, it is. The east runs to our property. It has historically went through our property, but what happened is development up far. So if you see on the southern side of Far, there's been more and more and more houses.
Right.
And a lot of houses there have been directing water into the road ditch. So there's more water going into the road ditch again, more than has in the past. And that's just putting more and more and more water again there.
Backs up again. Into
Well, it just goes down the hill, and it could go through the culvert and go west. More than likely, that would be the best way to do it, because in that open field there to the bottom right, there's all houses around it, but they're talking about new houses in there. I don't know if it's ever going to happen or not. Then where's all that water going to go? Probably into the road ditch and down that road, back onto our land again. So if a municipal drain is conducted, if it's done and done properly, which the engineers will figure all that out, the water from both sides of Far can go through that municipal drain. It doesn't now, but it can and solve a lot of problems. If those developments ever incur, which I'm kind of sounding like it's going to, I hope not, but it possibly will. Having said that, also too, I did hear some rumors about a developer maybe wanting to clean a ditch out there, maybe make agreements with landowners to clean that ditch out. That was something to consider, but that's only good for now. As soon as the developer gets his way and gets his houses in, that drain can be totally altered again and have the same problem again. A municipal drain will be owned by the township, and it cannot be, nobody can go on it, but maintain it by the township.
Okay, thanks for your clarification on that.
No problem.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from council at this time? I would just ask you, you heard one of the options, and we've talked this before, is the creation of an easement through by the town through the, and I have no idea how that, I take it everyone signs on to that. Anyway, we ended up with an easement which more or less would keep that drain from being altered after it got built by a third party. Do you see that as an option in realizing that your opinion is a municipal drain is the ultimate? Mm-hmm. Do you see an easement being a kind of an alternative? But what's your opinion on that?
If somebody digs that ditch from Far to the river and has an easement, that's fine and dandy. But once they add more water to that again, you're adding more water to every ditch again. So if the developments do happen, you're adding more water to that again. And who's going to maintain that ditch 5 years down the road when that needs to be cleaned?
Yeah.
I mean, ditches all fill in. We all know that. They get weeds in them, trees fall in. I know there's no trees there now. Yeah. They get bulrushes in them, and it stops flow as well. As to from Far to the west, it was fairly flat in there, but the water did all flow there, and the ditches need to be maintained. There's also a lot on Far that got altered. The ditch used to cut across it, but they cut it straight and they filled it all in with dirt, which I don't know how they got permission to do that. I know they did, but that also really messed this up as well. Sorry.
Yeah. So also on an easement, I would think and again, I'm just words. I'm wondering who pays for the drain that way. At least if it goes to a municipal drain, it's all spelled out. Yes. Engineers come in, assign everyone that has water flowing into that drain. That's a third party does that. You don't do it. The town doesn't do it. The engineers site plan the whole thing, or laser it, or whatever, however they get the flow of. And if you're a mile away, and if that water comes into that drain, you are going to be paying for your fair share.
110%. Yes, you're right.
So as opposed to an easement, which is would have to go through a lot of legal precedent, I would think, or what have you.
Yeah.
Okay.
An easement will work, but it'll create a lot of problems today, tomorrow, down the road. And it's fine today, but when people sell houses and new tenants come in or their kids take over or whatever, it's just going to be a can of worms that are going to keep on coming out. If you go to a municipal drain, which your drainage engineer doesn't know all about municipal drains, and most people do, it takes the whole water study. Anything that water goes into there, it could be 500 acres. Nobody knows. It could be 300 acres. Across Weber Road, it could be as halfway to Chandler Road, the golf course. All that water goes, if it's supposed to go that way, everybody helps pay for it. Yes. And even on our picture, get our picture back up there again. Sorry. Those two big properties there, to the west that's open, and to the southeast that's open, where there's no housing now, and there's maybe proposed, they would even pay for all that, especially while whoever owns that now, like the person with the biggest land pays the most. The person who has a 1 acre lot hardly pays anything at the end of the day in comparison. The people with the most water flow, the region would pay for it, Weber Road would pay for it, the town would pay very little because it's Far Road, and anybody whose water goes in there pays for a municipal drain.
Excellent. So just to give council a little bit of your background, I believe you farm in Waynfleet, so you have got a lot of experience with municipal drains and how they happen.
Yeah, I'm also on a municipal drain committee in Waynfleet, and we maintain all the drains in Waynfleet. And Waynfleet is the most complex drainage system in all of Ontario because it's flat.
Yes.
And there again too. So we're pretty busy working there, and the municipal drains have worked fantastic there. And it's country property, and everybody out there, some people don't like to pay to get rid of their water, but nobody likes water on their property either. So when you explain it to everybody how little you have to pay, everybody's okay with it. The farmers or people with the biggest land base pay the most.
Okay.
Because it goes by per acre or how much water collected goes on into that municipal drain. Excellent. As to in here, even North Weber Road would all pay for all that. And the golf course and bushes and the region would even pay for all that.
Okay.
Or help, I should say help.
Okay, thank you for that. Those are my questions. Thank you for that. One last time to members of council, any questions? Not seeing any. Again, thank you for your presentation.
I have one thing to add.
Yep, go ahead, sir.
Sorry. So the roads department from Pelham does have the right, they can sign a single signature on a petition to initiate the petition to go from Far to the river. One signature will do it, and that's it. Okay. It can be done, as Sid pointed out in his comments to do with the staff report.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that.
It will be a really good, interesting thing to have people. The biggest problem with municipal drain is people don't know how they work. If you knew how they worked, they're simple and they're very, very, very good.
Yes, and some municipal drains, and I don't know, probably not this one, but some of them are culverts that go underground.
Mm-hmm. Many of them.
Yeah, they can actually fill them in and you don't even know they're there.
Western Ontario, it's almost all out there. In Chatham, Kent, Essex, Woodstock, there's huge ones underground there. They're not cheap.
No.
But you only pay for them once.
Yeah, the open concept would be the...
Is the cheapest, yes. And they, in Waynfleet, for instance, Waynfleet, they get mowed and maintained between 7 and 10 years. So it's very little maintenance. It keeps it in good shape. They got to be cleaned out. They get cleaned out, so they're not flooding people's properties.
Okay. Yep.
It's a very good system, but nevertheless, you guys have to decide all that.
Okay, thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you. All right.
And I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from John and Joyce Sonneveld regarding the town of Pelham drainage study for the Far, Weber, and River Road area for information.
Thank you. One last time, any further discussion on the presentation? Not seen, so Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin. Thank
Yes.
you. That motion carries. Moving to the next item on the agenda, 5.1.4, we have Mr. Ian McTaggart on the same issue as a delegation scheduled.
Okay. Mr. Taggart, you have the floor.
Can I borrow John's previous map of the corner of Far? And just because we had very little time to put this together, we found about this last week. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor and Council for hearing us. Our problem as landowners adjacent to this study, it's been brought up that the corner of Far and River
897 FAR, the building of a house, and bringing in of soil and readjusting 100-year floodplain, which ties into this problem. If you think you've got a problem with this one, this corner here is going to cause a lot more than what you're dealing with there. Do I need to go over the points here? Has council gone over any of this? You've all read it? Okay. So the related permits to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority permit 2021-00941 and Pelham Environmental Permit E72022. No indication of what is happening to the current swale northwest area indicated property, currently blocked by the movement of underburden and deposited into the water course. And if you could see the corner, you could actually, I don't know if we can blow up the corner, but the bottom end, it doesn't really show the, yeah, that's all right.
Nope, it doesn't go.
And going forward, like I say, maybe we can get a diagram and show you, but the ditch and drainage under the road there, the culvert is undersized, collapsed, and it just doesn't carry water. Water always backs up into there. The floodplain natural area has had overburden distributed to the point that the large deposit of material has been placed into the middle of the natural swale, causing the backup of water onto other properties. Same thing that's happening up north. The drawing that is in the proposal, which we were supposed to have a public meeting on, I don't know if you're aware, but the meeting was canceled a few days later, and we were hoping to bring this up at a meeting. We just luckily found out that there was going to be a council meeting today where you were addressing the previous problems here. Does the floodplain area affect only 897 River Road, or does it in fact affect the adjacent property to 895 as well? Because both properties have brought in fill, which we're talking about fill and how it adversely affects the drainage. Both properties have brought in fill now to 100-year floodplain, which drains everything of that landmass down to the river, north to south. So why is there a zoning request application being brought forward now when the overburden has already been brought in? And like we've got loads of soil that have been brought in, taken out, and we don't even have a permit, or we do have a permit, then the permit gets revoked. Like we don't know where we're at here. There's been no studies. And now we've had a meeting that we've had canceled, so we don't have any input, or like we're just morphing a small problem into a massive problem. And again, I believe the town is working to resolve flooding issues caused by the unnatural restriction of water flow on Regional 24 and Weber. This information from the previous meeting from the town, to my knowledge, which is evident that it hasn't been resolved. Okay. How will the application to alter the floodplain and modify the movement of the existing swales or swale on the property adversely affect my property and the surrounding other properties? Again, what we're dealing with at a much larger scale. The environmental bylaw of 3357/2013 states that we will not disturb the proper function of ditches, swales, ponds, septic beds, systems, lock grading, drainage, and natural habitats on the designated site or properties adjacent to the designation site. At this time, again, both swales are plugged and we're affecting adjacent properties. Has there been a study of impact to the surrounding properties pertaining to the flow of water and to the possible rise in the water table or effects of cutting tile drains, which nobody likes to talk about? All that land is underdrained, which goes into a massive drain on the said corner property at 897 that drains down to the river. Every one of those drains, every time they're touched, pools water back in behind, causes problems that we haven't even seen yet. Basement flooding, sump pumps, standing water. Problem times 100. So if these tiles are affected, how does it affect me and adjacent properties? We need studies, and we need to understand where this is going. The culvert under the river road that carries water from the said property at a flow rate of north to south, from River Road and Far to south to the Welland River, is blocked and not large enough in diameter to carry the amount of water flow from the landmass. Ditching, which has been repeatedly asked for, from 875 to 895 River Road. The culverts are higher than the ditches. They're not on a decent angle to drain them or pitch, and they're not wide enough and large enough. And as a result, the water is backing up, pooling, and flooding out the front of the property at 885 River Road in front of a septic bed. The floodplain area needs to be reestablished to the original elevation before it has been disturbed, because we've had fill brought in, brought out. We don't know where it is. It appears that there is a road allowance that Far Street actually carries on straight down to the river. Is there any way that we could align the culverts, like I'm just proactively looking at this, to make a swale down into that road allowance to adequately bring water under the road and down in? You have, and I'm sorry, but there's people that can't be here today because of work that own properties in that area who are willing to work with the town to use easements and whatever else for a road allowance and their property to bring the water down. Larger culvert, move it. They don't want standing water either. Keep in mind, this is not a NIMBY response. We're not opposed to building. Okay? But when I built in 2005, town council told me, you build on the existing property. You don't bring fill in. You don't jack it up so that the farmer has problems, so that the next door neighbor has problems. Both my property and my neighbor's adjacent property were never had fill brought in. We were allowed to dig a pond. That was the only thing we were allowed to do. No truckload after truckload. And that's where the problem exists. That and drainage. And now, I'd basically like to put this upon town to resolve the problem now before it morphs into a massive problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McTaggart, for your presentation. So you live, east of 895?
Two properties east.
Okay, thank you for that. I do want to have staff clarify one or two things, I believe, and I'll go to the fire chief bylaw. I believe that when it came to permits to haul in that dirt, I know that was quite a whatever. A lot of people got a hold of myself and Councilor Olson. We got a hold of bylaw, and I believe, can you tell us what happened after once you were contacted?
Through Mr. Mayor, some of the homes that were built years back were built and graded prior to our environmental fill, and we developed a fill bylaw because of the uncontrolled conditions of these. Homes today being built out, not only in that area, but through the town, have to provide drainage plans, grading plans. In that area, a lot of the MPCA is controlled, so they have to submit plans to the MPCA to be approved, and we follow that. So we won't issue permits now until all those things are met. But there has been a number of properties that were built prior to that bylaw that was developed, and there was no control.
But I'm speaking specifically on that corner lot that has all that fill brought in. You did check with the NPCA, and they did allow that fill. Am I correct there?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. We're talking about that would be the corner, the east.
Yes.
Corner of Far and River, where it comes together.
That's right.
Yeah, that's that property has an approved MPCA grade plan.
Yes. So they did supposedly follow the process, and NCPA sent out their field operatives, and they allowed for X number of loads to be brought into that.
That's correct. The environment, our bylaw will control where the dirt comes from.
Yes.
And then make sure that it's clean, but we don't control the amount that's coming in. And maybe the Director of Planning can speak more to the MPCA process, but that is their jurisdiction.
Excellent. And I just wanted to clarify that they did go through the channels, and that was NCPA jurisdiction on that particular lot.
Could I speak to that?
Yes, of course.
Sorry. If the MPCA wanted to talk about it, they had a meeting, and then they squashed the meeting. So
can I ask, obviously, we don't know about that meeting.
So-
When
so-
was, no, that's, when was that meeting?
clarify, this shows the property and
Yep. And when was that meeting scheduled?
cancellation letter that we received
Okay.
days later.
Okay. And when was that meeting scheduled? Like recently or years ago?
Supposed to be April the 12th of this year.
Okay. Okay, well, wait, if I can, I'll go to our Director of Planning. Barb, did you know about these meetings as a town staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the public meeting that was scheduled in April was for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment on these lands at the corner of River and Far Road. When the new zoning bylaw was approved, there was no longer a need for a zoning bylaw amendment, and so the public meeting was canceled because the new zoning bylaw had updated the mapping in this area based on the NPCA's floodplain mapping for the Welland River. And so the development that is approved in that area has the NPCA approval, and the development is outside of the floodplain, and the development can proceed.
Yes. Wait, just one, two seconds. So going by that then, Ms. Weens, so the town, anytime the NPCA is involved in a floodplain situation, they make a ruling or whatever you want to call that, and the town goes along with the NPCA. That's the chain of events?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. So part of the land is in the floodplain and part of the land is outside. So they did get a Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority permit approval to allow for some alteration in the grading in the floodplain because it's regulated by the Conservation Authority. The floodplain is. We do not have jurisdiction in that floodplain. It is the Conservation Authority that has the jurisdiction in the floodplain. So yes, we would certainly consult with them, and any building and development is required to be outside of the floodplain. The Conservation Authority through 2015 to 2019, they updated the floodplain mapping on Welland River. Our previous zoning bylaw had the old mapping in, considered as the as hazard land, and with the updated regulated floodplain mapping, the new zoning bylaw was developed to conform with the new mapping. And so anything that is in the floodplain in the new zoning bylaw is restricted from having development take place on it.
Excellent. One more question I have. One more question to the director, if I may. And I realize I didn't give you any heads up on this. The new mapping, is the area smaller than the old mapping, or any thoughts on that?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, the floodplain mapping, they updated all the floodplain mapping along the entire stretch of the Welland River. So in parts of along the Welland River, it expanded. In other areas, it contracted. In this area, without looking at what the previous mapping was, I can't say for certain if the floodplain mapping, contracted in this area or not. I suspect that is what happened, though.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. McTaggart.
I do. Is it on?
There you go.
I do believe that the mapping has actually increased there, and it's 100-year floodplain mapping. It's the lowest spot of that. If we can put the map back up there, that's the lowest spot of that entire landmass where everything drains. So when you're talking about the drainage ditches coming down far, guess where they're going to? And there's a swale that crosses the road from far that brings that water that you're saying is backing up. It doesn't matter how great a job you do ditching, and if you correct your problem up there, it's coming down there, you're bringing land in, you're filling it up, it's not going anywhere. Like, I'm telling you, this is going to be a major problem, council.
So now when you, I'll open this up to council. I'm sorry, I'm asking all the questions. But that water source that you're talking about now is the ditch water, the road water, because the drainage study going from Far Drain or from Far Road to Victoria Avenue, there's actually a hump there. That water does not come down where you're talking.
But we just stated that when Mr. Bahar stated, and I'm sure that others can attest, that when that water goes in up further, it does in fact come
Yes, you're
down
right.
to the river under a culvert, under the road there by Lloyd Farr's old farm.
Yes.
And I had the privilege when I built to have Mr. Farr walk the property, who saw Hurricane Hazel come through, who lived in that farmhouse his entire life, and tell me what happened, how the road was underwater, and how if that piece of property on the corner ever got touched, there would be major implications because of the underdraining. We're not just talking about surface water here. We're talking about underdrained tiles, great big ones.
Okay. Okay,
Thank
thank you. Hang on. So now I'll go back to council. Any questions from any councilors on Mr. McTaggart's report? I see Councilor Kerr.
Yes, I guess following up, is there any opportunity or do you have registered tile drainage plans for any of the properties that would show exactly where the tile drains are installed, where the mains are, and the outlets are located?
I personally don't, but I'm pretty sure we could find some information on it if we needed to. There's a wealth of knowledge out there with farmers who are your best knowledge. And I'm sure we could dig something up, or in that case, I mean, the Conservation Authority should absolutely be involved in this because everybody wants to pretend that there's no drainage tiles or that the piece of property doesn't affect everybody else's adjacent properties.
I guess where I'm coming from is my knowledge of tile drainage installation and things in the past when people applied for tile drainage assistance, then they used to have a registered plan that went through municipality, and they used to get funding from the provincial government. However, if you put in a private drainage plan, you weren't required to do that. You could go through it, but there would be no drawings. I mean, the drawings was by the particular landowner.
Right.
The key is to find certified drainage plans, because there's two parts to it. One person can say they put in drainage. Second part is to have a certified drainage plan installed. So that's just a background question, that there's a lot of suggestion, and I'm not denying that they exist, but there's a way of fully documenting in stamped documents to say this exists at this property at this particular date, this is when it was installed. Going back to my father, actually, way back in the 40s, for the province, used to do tile drainage measurements and surveys for the local engineer, and that they were often recorded at the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. But that ceased in basically the late 70s, early 80s, that the agricultural engineer no longer got those plans. So you used to be able to look years and years and years ago, but like I say, if there's registered plans and they received some type of provincial or municipal funding, then there would be formalized documentation. We have people suggesting it's there. The question is some way to formalize and be accurate in what is there. There is surface drainage, there is subsurface drainage, there's a whole variety of things that come into play. But part of the thing in my question is, if tile drainage pre-existed, then generally there's an outlet of the main somewhere to be found. And those are the kind of things that we track.
And you will find massive sinkholes, and the outlet to that drain is underneath the culvert that really doesn't drain the tile mass that comes through there is underneath where the current tile is. And there's sinkholes for where the old
tile, I guess, has collapsed, and you can see when it rains, when there's pooling, the water just drains down there and you can hear it running into the tile. I can also tell you that when they strip the land, and I can show you pictures, that they hit tiles, and that when people have built out there, that there's been tiles disrupted. So there are tiles there.
Any other comments? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so, well, I'm sorry, we really can't take, right, okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say something to help because Casey's
Yeah.
asking the tile drainage. I could tell you where they are, but that's okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, thank you for your presentation, and I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Mr. Ian McTaggart regarding the Town of Pelham drainage study for the Far, Weber, and River Road area for information.
Okay, thank you. One last time, any councillor comments or questions? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Thank you. So now moving on our agenda to staff report 10.2.1, the drainage study, River Road and Weber Road. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council receive the report 2023-0097, the drainage study for Far, River, and Weber Road area for information, and that staff be directed to investigate the feasibility of dredging the roadside ditches and culverts along Far and River Road within the Public Works 2023 operating budget and/or the 2023 roadside ditching program, and that staff continues to participate in discussions with developers on the east and west sides of River Road to identify potential long-term comprehensive drainage and stormwater solutions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll turn to council for any comments, questions of the staff report. Councilor Niznik.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Weens, or maybe through council, I'm not sure if, is it reasonable to maybe put a pause on any further building and development in this area until these issues get rectified?
To the Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Mr. Mayor, through you, so any of the lots that have frontage on the open road allowance, the public open road allowances being Weber, Far, River, and Victoria Avenue, we have to issue building permits on. Those internal lots that don't have frontage on a public road, we currently are not in a position to issue building permits on because the zoning bylaw requires them to have frontage on a road. But the lots were legally created, and so we are obligated to issue permits on those that conform to the zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Ms. Weens. To Councilor.
Thank you. That's unfortunate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments at this time? So we've had, well, we've got, I guess we're just commenting on the report, so it's not right for me to take anything else. So on the report, again, any other questions? I guess my questions are to Ms. Weens. So I take it the town commissioned the report, and you've read the report, and it, obviously by writing that staff report. So all in all, it's almost identical. Staff must agree with the report that we had given to us by the consultants, as proven in your staff report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think the information that was done by a Hydric Geomorphic Limited is very useful information and very good information in terms of understanding, what the drainage issues and what the problems are. We certainly, don't have any reason to not agree with the findings of their report, and same with their recommendations for solutions to that report or to those issues. The question is, as has been alluded to, is how do we implement those recommendations?
So I have also known, and I think council is also aware of this, and Mr. Sonfeld alluded to it, that the town is in negotiations with the previous landowner, or the owner of the lots, however you want to call that. To either you, or I guess to Mr. CAO, I guess the thing is, so what are the next steps? I mean, one thing that I don't think members on this council want to do is receive this report and then it just disappears. We obviously have a problem. Agriculturally speaking, we know that the water is not flowing in the right direction. If one was to study the Drainage Act, as Mr. Sonfeld has stated, if you start accepting water that isn't accepted, that historically hasn't gone onto your property, it puts people at risk, at liability. We do now have a study that says that the water has historically flowed from from Far Road to Victoria Avenue. Whether you agree with what the impediments are or the sizing of the culverts, the basic study is that the water has been changed. So I guess what is this council now prepared to do? I mean, we either accept the report or do we direct staff to continue talking to the individual who has come forward? Is that worth that going down that road? I will turn to our voice of reason and experience, to the CAO. Knowing, like I say, I honestly, I don't think this council wants to just say, yeah, it's a good report and say goodbye. Go ahead, sir.
Well, as a starting point, there are recommendations in the staff report. So the starting point is to discuss those and what do you think of those? Okay. And then fundamentally, I think there needs to be a conversation around the topic of a drain, and whether there is, it was suggested by someone that the municipality, the staff report acknowledges the municipality could initiate that. But it also states, quite frankly, that the town's road isn't flooding, and that is the only reason the municipality is ever the actor to start a municipal drain anywhere. You can direct us to do that. There is, from the corporate perspective, if you separate the corporation of the town from the town as a collective of humans, there is no reason for the corporation to initiate that. Now, there may well be, and you are the directors of the corporation. So it's about having a conversation about how to get to a solution that sort of works for everyone and what the source of ultimately paying for that is, understanding that all of the town's money, one way or another, fundamentally comes from all of the residents. There are 18,000 and change people here in Pelham, and all of the money that the town of Pelham has comes from those 18,000 and change people. And we are fundamentally looking at a localized problem. And therein leads to some challenging decisions. And that's the hard piece that, happily for staff, that's the piece that lands with council. But for you right now, there's a staff report with a couple of options, and I think your most fruitful time, you've heard a lot of things, there's some things we need to chew on. You may well direct further reports from us, but we have some ideas and some recommendations within that staff report, and I suggest you interact with those, because I think you can get a very good fulsome conversation going. And when people hear those thoughts out loud, it sort of gives us all a way forward. So that's what I would endorse doing.
Okay. So if all due respect to my Mr. CAO, we are indeed great friends, I do take umbrage with the fact that you point out that this is a local problem. Rice Road erosion is a local problem. Station Street was a local problem. This is a local problem. So the fact that just because this is a local problem is not a reason for this council or for staff to, sorry, we don't want to go there. It's not affecting many citizens.
Well, in fairness, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about this, ultimately the source of the monies and the solution. Most typically, when there's a problem with drainage in a rural area, a municipal drain is the solution. That is how that works in Wainfleet and Chatham and Niagara-on-the-Lake. And fundamentally, I suspect that's the solution here. The staff report does talk about some dredging and some mentions culverts, and you've seen some problems, but we also have heard that we don't think that's a be-all and end-all solution. That may be a Band-Aid, and that's maybe something, again, to put back to this council, I think you need to start discussing as a group. But that's no one, not the experts nor the staff report, identify that as a permanent solution that will deal with all issues. And so I think if that's understood, then you can have a fruitful conversation about that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'm just trying to think of how I would like to see us go. I know how I'd like to see us go, but there is a process. Mr. Clerk.
Do I need to make that change, Your Worship? So,
No.
okay,
no.
thanks. We do have a motion on the floor, as the CAO has pointed out on the staff report. Council could deal with that report or that recommendation, and then if you or another member of council wanted to bring forward another resolution for staff direction, you'd be welcome to do that. So you can take it a step further after you deal with this resolution and put other topics on the floor for council's discussion and deliberation.
Excellent. As usual, your wisdom shines through. So perhaps read the motion.
So, okay, I will reread the motion. So it was moved by Councillor Nisnik and seconded by Councillor Eckhart that it be resolved that council receive the report, the drainage study for Far River Road and Weaver Road, for information, and that staff be directed to investigate the feasibility of dredging the roadside ditches and culverts along Far Road and River Road within the Public Works 2023 operating budget or within the 2023 roadside ditching program, and that staff continues to participate in discussions with the developers on the east and west sides of River Road to identify potential long-term comprehensive drainage and stormwater solutions. So that's the resolution that's on the floor. You can deal with that, and then you can move to add a new resolution for further discussion.
I would like to put a timeline on the discussions with the developer, and we either reach an agreement, whether it be 30 days or 60 days, or we look at bring it back to council to discuss alternative steps.
I'll look to the CAO, but I think we could take that as staff direction that we report back to council within 60 days on those discussions.
I have learned that Director Weens is a source of excellent ideas, and when I see her hand pop up, I almost always think, I should shut my mouth and see what she has to say. So we could.
So we will turn to Ms. Weens for her knowledge. Please, Ms. Weens.
Mayor, through you, just to be clear, the discussions that we've had, and they are discussions, they're not negotiations, so I just want to be clear on that, have been with the developers on both the east and west side of Far Road. There are a number of lots there that were created, and they would like the opportunity to develop those lots. And so I have indicated to them in a very frank manner that, yes, those lots are legal lots. They just don't conform to the zoning bylaw, and so they're not buildable lots. And in order to achieve buildable lots, and if staff were to be ever in a position to recommend approval of a zoning bylaw amendment or some other type of development approval for that road, whether that's a plan of subdivision or a condominium, we want to see the drainage issues resolved in this area. And so we've been very clear with them that that would likely mean fewer lots, because I would envision that there would be the need for some type of stormwater management facility or something. We are not there yet. We've had these discussions with the developers. They are certainly eager to work together. But nobody has done any engineering design to figure out what that solution would look like, and those kind of things. And any discussions or any types of solution would obviously still have to come to council for approval, and it would still require some type of planning approvals, whether that's a zoning bylaw amendment or a plan of condominium or subdivision. Those things have yet to be worked out. So the discussions are very early on.
Yes.
And what I can indicate is that there's a willingness between the two parties to work together to find solutions. And so I think putting a time frame on this is I don't think we are going to have a solution within 30 days or 60 days. That's my concern, because it is going to require some further work and to find out what that solution would be. And whatever that solution will be would also need to be reviewed by our engineering staff, but also the Conservation Authority staff, and very likely the region as well. So it's, there's agreement at this stage to work together, but we don't know what that solution is going to look like.
Okay, thank you. I remember some years ago when I was, must be 2014 or 2015, when I was on council, and we discussed a municipal drain down around North Pelham. Can you walk me through, how was that initiated? That was actually the citizens that came to the town, I believe.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We received a petition from property owners for a municipal drain in that area. And then we hired a drainage engineer to go through that process, and they got to the point of preparing the drainage report, and that drainage report was presented to council as well as to the community, and petitioners removed their name from the petition. It was no longer a valid petition, and so the municipal drain work never commenced.
Thank you. And I realize this is all written down in a book someplace, but is it the majority of landowners that have to come to staff, council? Is that what initiates the drain action?
So in order for a petition to be valid, it needs to be signed by 50% of the property owners within the watershed area, or it needs to, those that sign within the watershed area have to represent 60% of the land holdings. So those are the criteria that are used to determine if a petition is valid, and only the drainage engineer can determine if the petition is valid.
Excellent, thank you. And for the first step or two, there is no cost. When does all of a sudden you've got to make up your mind, you're either going or not? To get the process going, it isn't a cost. Is that correct?
So to initiate a petition, I don't believe that there's any cost associated with that. If the if we have a signed petition, we would then hire a drainage engineer to determine if that petition is valid. If the petition is deemed to be valid, then he would go forward with, or they would go forward with doing the drainage study to determine, again, the works that are required, the design. And then if those works proceed, ultimately, in the end, then everybody who benefited from the work would share in the cost of doing the, the engineering study, as well as the cost associated with implementation of the works, the construction of the works.
Excellent.
If people withdraw their name from the petition after the engineering study is completed, and the petition is deemed valid or invalid, pardon me, then anyone who had signed that petition would be responsible for the costs that were incurred to date.
Okay, thank you. And does that include the very first engineer that comes to validate the need for the petition?
The cost to, if we hire an engineer and he determines that the cost of that the petition is not valid or valid, those are costs that would be borne by the town.
Okay, thank you for that. I see Councillor Olson, you had a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the CEO, so point of clarification, would the alternatives be considered, they would include a municipal drain, I assume?
They can. So maybe it'll be more helpful if I'd suggest there are 3 recommendations. Obviously, at some point, you're going to receive the report, so that one's self-evident. The second one talks about directing us to figure out if, how, and how much ditching could be done in the area. I haven't heard commentary, but there may be support for that. The third piece doesn't have a timeline, and it would astound me if this were the calendar year that the third piece has fruition. So understanding that might lead to Councillor Olson's question. The middle stanza, which is dredging, is a relatively short-term thing, is a in-year thing, which is why it's written there and written in that way to give us, so that we can come back to you with a couple of options. And I'm sure we could come back to you within a month and possibly for the next meeting, possibly within 2 weeks. I think that's doable. When you deal with those, then to Councillor Olson's point, there may be further direction. You might either ask us a report for a very specific report, saying you're looking for how you do something, or if you feel very strongly, you may just outright direct. I suggest asking for the report, but as you will. So that's how I might proceed at this point in time.
Councillor?
I certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly want to have that as part of the considerations, and we could start getting reports on how that could operate and how that could work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
To the clerk.
Okay, so we do have that resolution in front of council. If there's no further discussion.
Yeah. Oh, Councillor Desnick.
Sorry, thank you. I always seem to get you when your head's going that way, so. Just to clarify, so yes, for the second motion about directing staff or directing the investigation of the feasibility of dredging, could we add in there to report back by within 2 weeks regarding that, feasibility of that, and then with hopefully a plan of if it's feasible, and we decide it is feasible, to go ahead and get that done and completed certainly within this year.
So certainly, I'm looking at Derek, and our telepathy is failing us. What I would say is, look, we're happy to take his direction. We promise we'll come back within a month. I'm less certain on the 2-week time frame because keeping in mind you've got a 1-week publish lead time. So that's a week. I don't know, but that might be conceivable. So whether you choose to formally amend that or not, I'm publicly in front of the world saying we'll definitely get back within a month, and we'll aim for 2 weeks so that you have that piece of timeline. And the question really only is, would you like to pass this as written and then do a second motion to address Councillor Olson's concerns, or would you like to add his into the existing motion, and that we're happy to take your direction on?
Councillor Olson, you have any preference?
My preference is be to include something, a reference to a municipal drain. So if it requires an amendment, I would make that a motion to amend.
Then perhaps Councillor Olson could move that staff be directed, and further, that staff be directed to produce a report with specific advice, recommendations, and options on how we might proceed with a municipal drain to cover the subject area. And now that might delay, so we might be bringing 2 reports back 2 weeks in a row, because that is harder than the other. I am utterly confident of that. But obviously there's some need for, it's important to the community. So if we can do 1 2 weeks from now, 1 4 weeks from now, I think that's probably realistic.
Do you want to check with staff first, or are you okay with that?
Well, I'm seeing head nods. It's like our telepathy is back. It, it comes and goes. It's kind of like internet signal.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, have you
Thank
got
you.
the notes?
Yeah, I do. So I have a proposed amendment put on the floor by Councillor Olson. To consider that now, we need a seconder. And that amendment is that staff be directed to provide a report back to council on the possibility of incorporating a municipal drain to resolve the issues identified.
And I see Councillor Wink will second.
So I have a seconder. So any more discussion on the amendment?
Any more discussion on the amendment brought forward and seconded? I'm definitely will support this. Any other comments? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, so the vote now on the amendment. We're going to commence that with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that amendment is carried. So now we'll consider the main motion with the amendment that, do you need me to read this all again?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any?
Okay, so with the main motion as amended, we'll start with the vote. Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin. So
Yes.
that motion as amended is carried. Thank you. Now moving to item 10.2.6 on the agenda, staff report. And maybe I'll just advise council we're approaching our deadline. So as we get closer to 1 o'clock, I may look for a motion for council to extend the meeting past 1 o'clock to 1:30. But we have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved, the council receive report 2023-0094 sidewalk patio encroachment policy update and new approval framework for temporary outdoor patios for information, and that council approved policy number S201-04 temporary outdoor patios on municipal or private property as revised, and the council directs staff to prepare an amendment to the town's fees and charges bylaw to include an annual temporary patio on municipal permit fee of $150.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or questions from councillor on this item? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Commencing with the vote then. Commencing with the vote, starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. So sorry. Nothing under unfinished business or new business. We have 13, presentation and consideration of bylaws. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaw, do now read a first, second, third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized, be here and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaw 26-2023 being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw 4881-2022 as amended for lands located south of Port Robertson Road, east of Stella Street, and west of the Steve Bauer Trail, legally described as part of Lot 173, Geographic Township of Thorold, now in the Town of Pelham, Regional Municipality of Niagara, from the Residential 1, R1, and the Environmental Protected EP1 zones to Site-Specific Residential 2, 156, R2-156, Environmental Protection 1, EPA1, and Open Spaces 02 zones, file number AM-03-2020, and 2, the bylaw 2723 being a bylaw to authorize and execute the lease of an agreement with Fonthill Platform Tennis Club for the lands and clubhouse facilities at 1120 Hayes Street. Be approved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments, questions on these bylaws? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Moving then to the vote, starting with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr. Yes. Councillor Niznik.
Yep.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is approved and those bylaws are passed. Thank you. Moving now to our item 14, we have a notice of motion by Councillor Olson. Moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. I'll turn to Councillor Olson to present his motion.
Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the town of Pelham supports local businesses and local economy, which contribute to community development and growth, and whereas emerging from COVID-19 pandemic, supporting business resilience and growth is critical to Ontario's economic recovery, and whereas businesses are still facing challenges in repaying funding received from the repayable government support programs and navigating business operation in the absence of support programs, and whereas the special exemption provided by Council on June 15, 2020 to waive a maximum of 6 parking spots required for restaurants to operate pop-up parking lot patios was initially to provide relief to those businesses facing occupancy restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. And whereas the permission of temporary pop-up restaurant patios situated in parking lots does not comply with the town zoning bylaw. And whereas the council provided two extensions to the special exemptions to permit temporary pop-up restaurant patios in parking lots in 2021 and 2022, and whereas council deems the economic recovery of restaurants and mobile food services to be still impacted by poor economic conditions, now therefore be it resolved that council for the town of Pelham permit the temporary waiving of the maximum of 6 parking spaces for restaurants to allow pop-up parking lot patios for the remainder of 2023, and that food trucks and refreshment vehicles be and are hereby permitted to operate within the specialty agricultural zones for the remainder of 2023, pending the acquisition of an itinerant seller's license.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And do you have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Hildebrand.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Hildebrand, do you wish to speak on the motion?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Olson's motion mainly because certain industries were severely impacted during the last few years because of COVID. And I think the food industry and the service industry in this area needs our support. And therefore, I wholeheartedly support this recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Turn to the rest of council. Any comments or questions on the motion as presented? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to show my lack of experience here. This is a notice of motion that's being approved, so we won't vote on that until the following meeting.
Mr. CAO?
Well, Councillor Olson, forgive, I thought we actually had the first. We did.
Did we?
Time.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so it is for approval this time around.
My apologies. So, if there's no more comments or questions from council, we'll proceed with the vote, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. And again, my apologies. So prior to moving into camera, I believe one of the councillors wanted to speak to an issue.
Oh,
Councillor
yes.
Kerr?
Yes. Councillor Kerr, go
Yeah,
ahead.
very briefly, I just wanted to highlight to everyone that the Fenwick Firefighters Association is having a spaghetti dinner on Saturday, April 29th at the Station 2 Fire Hall from 5 to 7 p.m. And since we don't have a meeting until after that, I just wanted to promote to everyone that it's a good time and always more than enough to eat so it's Saturday, April 29th at Station 2 Fenwick Firefighters Association spaghetti dinner.
And thank you for that, bringing that to the town's attention, Councillor Kerr. And back to you, Mr. Clerk.
Item 15, resolution to move in camera. So I have.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, sorry. Councillor Olson?
Yes, I have something I forgot to mention for an announcement I forgot to mention during my Chamber of Commerce. There's going to be an event at the Niagara Falls Convention Center on May 24th, and the council and senior leadership team is invited to it. And it's Niagara Networks and Industry Collaboratives, which promises to be quite a useful event. I know that falls on the same day as that's the 24th from 9 to noon, followed by lunch. That's the day that Pelham Cares has their 40th anniversary lunch, so I just want to point that out to others because I think I'll plan to attend the part of it, but be back for the luncheon for the Pelham Cares. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that.
Okay, thank you for that announcement, Councillor Olson. We now turn to Mr. Clerk.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees. And D, labor relations or employee negotiations. One item, consideration of appointees to the advisory committees.
Any discussion on this motion? Not seeing any?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. We just need a moment now to turn off the live